Chapter 468. When the strong practitioners had wrestled back then, the disc containing Yudu Minghua had been destroyed, and everyone in the sacred fire sacrifice on the disc had met with misfortune. Long Yi and Heavenly Wolf Great Sage were fine. With the replenishment of the essence of the cloud forest tree, they could protect themselves. However, the strong practitioners of the human race were caught in the crossfire. Their essence, chi, and spirit were burned by the sacred fire sacrifice, and their primordial spirits were on the verge of collapsing. Even if they were left alone, if they didn't receive treatment in time, they might perish on their own. Not to mention the imminent disaster of the disc collapsing. When Lin Feng saw the situation, he took the opportunity when the others were fighting for Yudu Minghua to save Monk Dade, King Onliang Shi Zongyue, and Dao Venerable Xingdou. Sword Venerable Guanchong was also saved by the sect master of Mount Shu Sword Sect, Xian Longsheng. However, just saving them was useless. These people were still in an extremely dangerous state, on the verge of perishing. Lin Feng could only temporarily use the heavenly cycle purple qi to maintain their primordial spirits, so they wouldn't perish immediately. He first came to Monk Dade, and the old monk sat cross-legged with a madra. His expression was serene and calm, and his skin was covered in a layer of faint gold. He was like a Buddha statue, but this Buddha statue was covered in cracks as though it could shatter at any time. Monk Dade opened his eyes, and when he saw Lin Feng, he smiled slightly. "My Buddha is merciful. You must be the master of Profound Gate, right? It's my fortune to meet you today. It can be considered fate. This poor monk greets you." Lin Feng looked at him and asked, "From Master's tone, you seem to have known me before today?" Monk Dade said with a smile, "The influence of the Master of Profound Gate is like thunder piercing the ears in the divine land today. Even though this poor monk is an outsider, I've also heard of you before. However, just as the Master of Profound Gate had said, before your name had spread far and wide, this poor monk had already heard of your name." Lin Feng revealed a faint smile. "In the past, I've met two disciples of Great Thunderclap Monastery. One was called Huikong, and the other was Huku. I wonder how they are related to Master?" Monk Dade nodded his head. This poor monk had met Huikong before, and he had mentioned you before. "That little monk Huikong is still searching for Saraira?" Lin Feng calmly asked. Zen Master Dade replied, "That's right. He is a sincere person, and has never given up." Lin Feng's expression did not change as he said, "If you can contact him, tell him that I have found the 24 relics that Huiku lost in the past, and sent them back to the pagoda forest at the back of the Great Thunderclap Temple for burial." Zen Master Dade, who had always been calm and collected, was also stunned at this moment. His eyes revealed a pleasantly surprised expression as he looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng nodded and continued, "Not only the 24 relics, but also the relics left behind by an eminent monk who cultivated the unmoving Rulai Sutra. They fell into the hands of the cultivators of the Tianqi sect, and were later obtained by me. I have also sent them back to the Great Lane Temple for burial." He opened his palm, and the 16 relics were laid out peacefully. "The 16 relics carried by the monk Yuan Xiang that you chased this time are also here. I originally planned to send them back to the ruins of the Great Thunderclap Monastery. We have arrived." As he spoke, Yujing Mountain escaped from the void. With a sweep of his mana, Lin Feng brought Zen Master Dade to the mountain range where the Great Thunderclap Monastery used to be. Zen Master Dade looked at the ruins of the Great Thunderclap Monastery, and the relics in Lin Feng's palm. He was in a daze and did not speak. Lin Feng held the relics and looked at Zen Master Dade. He said, "In order to prevent the power of the relics from fluctuating, I have sealed them with my own mana. Since you are here now, it is not convenient for me to overstep my boundaries. I will leave it to you to deal with." Zen Master Dade put his palms together, and chanted the name of Buddha in a low voice. "Buddha is merciful. The relics can return to the Thunderclap Pure Land all thanks to the Master of Taoist Xianmen. I am the one who should not overstep my boundaries. Please complete this merit, Master." Lin Feng smiled and waved his hand. A large hole strangely appeared in the ground. After he threw the relics in, a system notification rang in his ear. 16 relics have returned to the Great Thunderclap Monastery's Pure Land of Bliss, with the help of the host. Return to Bliss side mission completion rate 16/1988. Host has received a Buddhist scripture as a reward. Lin Feng was startled. Is it because the difficulty of this mission is too high? As long as I return a portion of the relics, I can receive a reward? No matter what, to be able to receive a reward, Lin Feng was still very happy. He opened the gift bag and saw a Buddhist scripture of the Subodhi Sutra. Oh, this is a Buddhist scripture. It is about the same level as the Ksitigarbha Sutra and the Art of Akala, but it is lower than the Five-Direction Buddha Sutra. Lin Feng glanced at it and knew that this Subodhi Sutra was also a Buddhist scripture of the Great Thunderclap Monastery. Among the Buddhist scriptures of the Great Thunderclap Monastery, the Five-Direction Buddha Sutra was the highest. Other than that, there were other Buddhist scriptures. The Art of Akala and the Subodhi Sutra were the best of the best. To the current Lin Feng, the Subodhi Sutra wasn't very useful. Among the Buddhist scriptures, only the Five-Direction Buddha Sutra could give him help and reference. Buddhist scriptures of the level of the Subodhi Sutra could only be used to fill up the library. But what made Lin Feng pay more attention was that this Subodhi Sutra was the complete version. From the general outline to all the scriptures and even combat techniques, it had everything. I've sent 16 relics back this time, and the system rewarded me with a Subodhi Sutra. What if I collect 160 relics and send them back for burial? Would I be rewarded with a Buddha Sutra? Lin Feng thought to himself. Or is it that after accumulating to a certain level, the rewards will get better and better? While thinking, Lin Feng turned to look at Zen Master Dade. He formed a spell and refined a cloud forest tree, turning it into a ball of white light that wasn't dazzling but was incomparably thick. Lin Feng extracted large amounts of essence energy from this ball of white light and injected it into Zen Master Dade's body. Zen Master Dade was startled but didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and accepted Lin Feng's good intentions, focusing on refining this vast amount of spiritual energy. The cracks on the surface of his body that were like spiderwebs were quickly repaired. The golden Buddhist light on his body became stronger and stronger until it gradually turned back into a golden Buddha, emitting boundless light. Lin Feng looked at the golden Buddha in front of him. He saw 8 peacocks lifting up his body, his right hand holding a lotus and his left hand holding a bell. His expression was emotionless and his entire body was emitting light, emitting boundless light. Is this the golden body of Buddhism condensed from the boundless light Rilai scripture to form an essence soul? Lin Feng's gaze flickered as he looked at the golden Buddha silently. He saw the Buddhist light on the Buddha's body gradually change, the golden color slowly fading away, leaving behind only the purest, most original light. Just by looking at this golden Buddha and feeling the concept of power within, then referring to the great light mantra of the Buddha Sutra of infinite light that he had grasped, Lin Feng felt that he had actually slowly figured out the true meaning of the Amitabha Sutra of the Buddha Sutra of infinite light. After a long while, Zen Master Dade dispersed the golden Buddha golden body and returned to his original appearance. His complexion was no longer ashen like before, but he still appeared weak. He didn't obtain the entire cloud forest tree like Long Yi and the heavenly wolf great sage, but the essence energy he obtained was already enough for him to stabilize his golden primordial spirit. Thank you, Master of Xian Gate, for lending a helping hand. Zen Master Dade put his palms together and sincerely thanked Lin Feng. I am even more grateful to Master of Xian Gate for helping the relics of my Buddhist seniors return to the pure land of Great Thunderclap. Lin Feng silently said, Master, no need to be so courteous. Reborn in pure land, those who are sleeping in peace should not be disturbed again. I passed by your temple's ruined pagoda forest earlier and felt something. I have already decided to search for the lost relics of your temple and send them back to the Great Thunderclap Temple for burial. If I have any gains in the future, I will send them back to the Great Thunderclap Temple for burial. Hearing this, Zen Master Dade nodded repeatedly. Master of Xian Gate's virtue is immeasurable. This poor monk is endlessly grateful. He looked around, looking at the ruined temple that had already turned into ruins inside. When a person dies, the lamp goes out. Entering reincarnation once again is just another cultivation. The body is just a stinky bag, it's just what it looks like. This poor monk always comforts himself like this. But when I think of the relics of the Buddhist seniors being desecrated by others, I can't bear it. After all, my cultivation is still not enough. Lin Feng smiled faintly. To see one's nature, to discern one's true self, the bag can be empty, but it can also not be empty. Zen Master Dade also smiled. Master of Xian Gate is right, this poor monk has learned. Lin Feng asked, Master, what do you plan to do next? This poor monk has a presumptuous request. After hesitating for a moment, Zen Master Dade put his palms together, bowing towards Lin Feng. This poor monk hopes to be able to work together with the Master of the Celestial Gate to search for our Buddhist relics, to send the remains of our senior monks back to paradise. The Great Lane Temple has already been destroyed. Everything is set in stone. I do not wish for the revival of Buddhism. Therefore, I hope that I can serve under the Master of the Celestial Sect of Xianmen. I am willing to serve the Celestial Sect of Xianmen in order to repay the Master of the Celestial Sect of Xianmen for saving my life and protecting my Buddhist relic. Zen Master Dade put his palms together and bowed to Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at him and smiled. Master, you're too polite. You don't have to mention joining me. If you're willing, you can be a guest in my Xian Gate. The Great Lane Temple's 10,000-year-old ancient temple has suffered a calamity. I'm also very sad. I don't want you to leave Buddhism. I'm also fated with Buddhism. Since that's the case, let's form another connection. Zen Master Dade nodded. Master of Xian Gate is magnanimous. This poor monk can't thank you enough. Lin Feng smiled. Keeping Zen Master Dade was a matter of pros and cons. There was actually a deeper reason why the Tempest Temple had become the target of public criticism in the past. Other than being at odds with the Great Zhou dynasty, Taishu Temple and Mount Shu Sword Sect had joined the war to destroy Buddhism. As far as Lin Feng knew, it was not a simple conflict of interests. If he took in a Buddhist disciple who had survived the calamity now, there might be hidden dangers in the future. But the benefits were also very obvious. Not to mention that his sect had an additional guest in the primordial divinity level, which strengthened the sect's strength. At the same time, it was more likely to get the complete Infinite Light Buddha Sutra. This was also a matter of buying a horse's bones with 1,000 gold coins. After the Tempest Temple was destroyed, Zen Master Dade was not the only primordial divinity level Buddhist almighty who escaped. Although they were scattered, they were still a force when they gathered together. Lin Feng believed that Zen Master Dade and the others would be in contact with each other. As for the hidden dangers that might come in the future, Lin Feng had a rough idea. Disasters and blessings go hand in hand. If handled properly, not only will there be no harm, but there will also be unexpected gains. Chapter 469. Monk Dade was considered a guest of worship. Unlike protector elders like Kong Nanhua and Miao Shihao, he had more freedom, but his relationship with the sect was relatively estranged. To outsiders, Kong Nanhua and Miao Shihao could call themselves Xianmen Tianzong, while Monk Dade still belonged to the Tempest Temple. It's just that right now the Great Thunder Temple has long since been destroyed. Existing is equivalent to non-existent. That's why Monk Dade can also be counted as a member of the Xianmen Heavenly Sect. Lin Feng allowing him to not leave Buddhism is to help Monk Dade preserve a portion of the past relationship with his sect. For Monk Dade, this was the best result. He was naturally grateful for Lin Feng's magnanimity. He was a kind person and had decided to repay Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong in the future. Seeing him like this, Lin Feng could not help but smile in his heart, adding fuel to the fire. Returning to Jade Capital Mountain, he brought Monk Dade into the Tower of Scriptures. In a corner of the library on the first floor of the Tower of Scriptures were many scriptures, all of which were Buddhist scriptures. Lin Feng had specially opened up a corner to store them separately. Monk Dade caressed these scriptures with his palm, his eyes revealing a nostalgic expression. He was clearly thinking of the Tempest Temple's Tower of Scriptures. Lin Feng said lightly, "Other than collecting relics and sending them back to the Tempest Temple for reburial, I also came across some Buddhist scriptures by accident, so I collected them here and sorted them out and stored them, hoping to recreate the Tempest Temple's Buddhist scriptures. Although the Tempest Temple has been destroyed, as long as the scriptures passed down are not lost, there may be a day when it will rise again." Monk Dade took a deep breath and turned to Lin Feng. putting his palms together. Sect Master, your merit is immeasurable. All the Buddhist disciples in the world are grateful. He turned to stare at a scripture and sighed. Buddha is merciful. The last time I saw the Mahavairokkana scripture was before the war between the two worlds. After that great battle, countless elders of the sect passed away, and the sutra library was also destroyed, causing this sutra to be lost. Slowly, Zen Master Dade shook his head and praised. I thought that I would never be able to see this Vairokkana scripture again in my life. Although it's missing the Vairokkana palm seal, it's already extremely rare. Zen Master Dade murmured. On behalf of all the Buddhist and Taoist disciples, I thank Sovereign for allowing this scripture to reappear in the world. Zen Master Dade looked at the Vairokkana Sutra in front of him, the Unmovable Vairokkana Sutra, the Infinite Light Vairokkana Sutra, the Art of Akala, the Subhuti Sutra, the Ksitigarbha Sutra. These were all the top Buddhist spells of the Great Thunderclap Monastery in the past. Now that they were all gathered together, even the Zen heart that Zen Master Dade had cultivated for many years was stirred at this moment. Thinking of the tragic scene when the Great Lane Temple was destroyed, he actually had the urge to cry. Lin Feng smiled and said, If there are any gains in the future, I'll leave them all to you to sort out. What do you think? Zen Master Dade nodded and said solemnly, Thank you, Sovereign. Lin Feng and Zen Master Dade left the sutra's depository and chose a cave residence on Yujing Mountain for him to live in. He also extracted a part of the essence of the cloud forest tree, so that he could continue to recuperate and cultivate in peace. As a Buddhist cultivator, Zen Master Dade mainly cultivated himself. His own strength and state of mind were strong, so when faced with the sacred fire ritual, he had more resistance. But after that, he cultivated with the essence of the cloud forest tree and borrowed external forces to restore his own essence, chi and spirit, which was much more difficult. This was a slow process and could only rely on Zen Master Dade to recuperate himself. After Lin Feng sent Zen Master Dade back to the stone room to rest, he extracted 2 balls of essence from the cloud forest tree. Then he spread his sleeve and purple gas surged, releasing Shizongyue and Xingdou Dao Master. The 2 of them were also tortured by the sacred fire sacrifice to the point of death. Prince and Liang Shizongyue was slightly better, but Stardo Dao Master was already exhaling more than he inhaled. He was half a step away from the collapse of his primordial spirit. In this case, Lin Feng could not even directly inject the essence of the cloud forest tree into Xingdou Dao Master's primordial spirit. Otherwise the old man would not be able to take it. He first used the universal sky purple chi and the dharma power of the Tine True Water to nourish Xingdou Dao Master's primordial spirit, and then slowly integrated the massive heaven and earth spiritual chi extracted from the cloud forest tree into Xingdou Dao Master's primordial spirit. Xingdou Dao Master was already on the verge of death. After a long time, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. After waking up, he did not dare to hesitate and quickly manifested his primordial spirit incarnation. He carefully refined and absorbed the massive essence to repair his primordial spirit. The essence of the cloud forest tree was only a resource to repair the primordial spirit. To repair the primordial spirit, the cultivator still needed to use the Taoist law. Xingdou Dao Master's primordial spirit turned into a dark galaxy. At first, there were only a few faint flashes of starlight, and the light was extremely weak, as if it could disappear at any time. As time went by, the starlight gradually brightened, and the number increased until finally, it turned into a galaxy again. Countless stars flickered endlessly. Although it was far less dazzling than when it was in its heyday, Xingdou Dao Master had obviously escaped from the danger of death. On the other side, Shizongyue's situation was much better. With the supply of the cloud forest tree essence, his essence, chi and spirit recovered rapidly. However, he did not display his primordial spirit incarnation, which was the image of the Red Dragon Emperor with a dragon head and a human body. Instead, he manifested into the image of a 3 feet tall giant with a crown on his head and a majestic aura. He wore a fiery red robe, and when he opened and closed his eyes, endless flames spurted out and turned into rolling red clouds. In the red clouds, there were constantly red light dragons swaying up and down. This red-robed giant sat cross-legged in the void, exuding a strange atmosphere. as if it was incompatible with the world in front of him. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Is this the void return Dharma body that Shi Zhongyue comprehended according to the Red Dragon Emperor's cultivation? There were 3 realms of the demon clan's immortal demon soul. The first was the immortal demon soul, the second was the primordial true spirit, and the third was the star soul fusion. After the human clan cultivator achieved the primordial spirit, there were also 3 realms. The first was to refine the chi into spirit and obtain the primordial spirit incarnation. The second was to refine the spirit into void and obtain the void return Dharma body. The third was to refine the void return Dharma body. Before the primordial spirit realm, although there were chi refining stage, foundation establishment stage, golden elixir period, and yuanying stage, in the end, they could all be collectively referred to as chi cultivators. Chi cultivators were life born from nature, so there would be a limit to their lifespan. Once the limit was reached, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Only by breaking through the limit and achieving the primordial spirit could one obtain a carefree and eternal life. The first realm of the primordial spirit realm, the primordial spirit incarnation stage, was to completely change the life form of a cultivator. It made it so that the cultivator no longer needed to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth into his body to cultivate. Instead, he could integrate himself into the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, becoming a part of the world. Being one with the world, one's lifespan was endless. Living as long as the world, unless the world was destroyed, one would follow it to the end. Otherwise, one's lifespan was naturally endless. However, this kind of integration and connection was still weak. It was established through the great Tao nomological laws that the cultivator comprehended the moment he achieved the primordial spirit. It was not truly the case that the world was one with him, and he was one with the world. Therefore, it was still possible for him to be killed by a powerful external force. Because the world was one, all the spiritual chi of heaven and earth could be freely transformed into one's own Dharma power. Therefore, primordial spirit cultivators generally did not face the problem of Dharma power exhaustion. This was unless there was an even stronger expert who used a powerful divine ability to temporarily cut off the connection between the primordial spirit cultivator and the world. For example, the sacred fire sacrificial rite that Golden Rock Great Sage had performed was like this. Once the primordial spirit incarnation of a cultivator was damaged, it would also cause the integration of the primordial spirit with the world to no longer be perfect. At this time, it would be impossible to mobilize the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to repair the body. This was the case for Shi Zhongyue, Tao Master Xingdou, and the others, which was why they needed the spiritual chi of the cloud forest tree to replenish themselves. After the injury was healed, the primordial spirit would once again integrate with the world, and the essence, chi, and spirit that had been obliterated would quickly be restored. The primordial spirit incarnation was often the embodiment of the will of the cultivator's Dharma access. And the next step for the primordial spirit incarnation was to refine the primordial spirit into the void. The condensation of the void Dharma body was different from the primordial spirit incarnation that integrated with the world. Refining the primordial spirit into the void was a process of destruction and reconstruction. It was to jump out of the world, understand the true meaning of the great Tao, and form a world of its own. It was no longer attached to the world of heaven and earth, but to truly have an independent self. Celestial being, man was always in the world, and refining the primordial spirit into the void was the starting point from which man and heaven began to exist equally. Previously, when Lin Feng had tricked Xiao Yan into refining medicine, he had once said that everything in the world, no matter who it was an independent individual and different from the rest. But if one were to look at it from the perspective of the world, they were just a part of the creation of all living beings. Cultivation was so that one could transcend the ordinary life of the masses. Even from the macro perspective of the world of creation, one was still different from the rest. At that time, the purpose of saying these words was indeed to trick Xiao Yan, but there was nothing wrong with the words themselves. They were the goal of cultivation. Refining the primordial spirit into the void was the first step to transcend and become independent. It was still very immature and was still a basic embryonic form, but it was a solid and crucial first step. When a primordial soul realm cultivator successfully advanced to the second-tier primordial soul realm, they would be able to refine a primordial spirit incarnation. A primordial spirit incarnation was a level higher than a primordial spirit incarnation. At the same time, it also transcended the will form of the cultivator's Dharma access and integrated with the cultivator's understanding of the Great Tao. Different people who reached the primordial soul realm, using the same Dharma access, would obtain the exact same primordial spirit incarnation. It was just that there might be differences in strength, but the existence of a primordial spirit incarnation was unique. However, second-tier primordial soul realm cultivators would usually not reveal their primordial spirit incarnation in battle. Although this mystical power was powerful, it was ultimately a Dharma access and not a Dharma access for actual combat. In a sense, it was somewhat similar to Yuanying. Although it was powerful, once it was damaged, it would cause severe damage to the cultivator. If the primordial spirit incarnation was shattered, the cultivator's realm would even fall back to the first-tier primordial soul realm. At this moment, the image of the red-robed giant that Swordsmanship manifested was the primordial spirit incarnation that he condensed based on the foundation of the Red Dragon Emperor's book and integrated with his own understanding of the Great Tao. Lin Feng silently watched Swordsmanship and Xingdou Dao Master cultivate. After a long time, the two slowly stopped and dispersed their primordial spirit incarnation and primordial spirit incarnation. They stood up and solemnly bowed to Lin Feng at the same time. "Thank you, Master of Xianmen, for your help," Lin Feng said lightly. "You two don't have to be so polite. Since we entered the cloudy forest world together, we should help each other." He waved his hand and broke through the void. "West Hill City is below. I will send you two here. However, if you have the intention to stay on this mountain, I also welcome you." Chapter 470. After Swordsmanship and Dao Master Xingdou thanked Lin Feng, they chose to return to Xiling City. After they left the mountain, Lin Feng did not immediately leave on Jade Capital Mountain. Instead, he hovered tens of thousands of meters above the ground. A moment later, a mana fluctuation came from the direction of West Tomb City. There was no malice and it was very friendly. Lin Feng faintly smiled. He left the mountain and landed above West Tomb City. There, a crack opened in the void and a middle-aged man walked out with a majestic gait. The person who came was the current emperor of the Great Qin dynasty, Stonefeather. This time, he did not bring any attendants. He was alone, and he wore casual clothes. He did not wear a dragon robe or a crown. Stonefeather was dressed like an ordinary cultivator, but the emperor's aura did not diminish. Golden mist rose around him and filled the air. In the golden mist, one could vaguely see hundreds of colorful lines of light connected to his body, and then extended into the surrounding void. Lin Feng looked closely and saw that the hundreds of rays of light were the auras of hundreds of ancient azure dragons glowing with colorful light. White, green, black, red, and yellow represented the 5 elements of metal: wood, water, fire, and earth. There were dozens of light dragons of each color. In the golden mist, the light dragons were faintly discernible. Their heads and necks were wrapped around Stonefeather's body, while their tails extended into the surrounding void as if there was no end. Lin Feng could feel that these light dragons were condensed from the emperor's aura of the Great Qin dynasty. This was the first time Lin Feng had come to the capital of the Great Qin dynasty, Xiling City. Silently feeling the majestic city beneath his feet, Lin Feng could feel that there was endless spiritual energy gathering here. That was the gathering of the destiny of the entire Great Qin dynasty. And this endless destiny was now added to Qin Emperor Stonefeather's body, turning into an almost tangible emperor's aura. He looked down and his might shook the world. The Qin Emperor Stonefeather here was much stronger than when he showed his brilliance in the cloudy forest world. A centipede dies but does not fall down. The Great Qin dynasty is the longest existing dynasty. Even if its overall strength has declined, its foundation is still strong. Lin Feng thought to himself, when I approached the Great Zhou country's Tianjing city, I didn't feel the aura of the country's luck gathering in one city. After all, the Great Zhou Empire has only risen in the recent few thousand years. It can't compare to the Great Qin Empire, which has been established for more than 10,000 years. However, the Emperor of Zhou Liangpan controls the Grand Imperial Palace. If he really wants to fight with the Great Qin, apart from West Hill City, no other place can stop him. Qin Emperor Stonefeather saw Lin Feng. Slowly, he said, "The master of the celestial sect of wonders has lent a helping hand. We express our deep gratitude." In the Cloud Forest realm, he fought with the 9 Glory Heaven collapsing formation, which was slightly further away from the battlefield of Yuduming Hua. When the disc containing everyone shattered, he was prepared to save Shi Zhongyue and Dao Venerable Star Dipper. In the end, Lin Feng beat him to it. Not only did Lin Feng save them, he even used the essence of the Cloud Forest tree to heal the primordial spirits of Shi Zhongyue and the rest. To the Great Qin Empire, he definitely had to remember this favor. The Great Qin Empire was huge, but primordial spirit realm cultivators were also an important power that was hard to come by. Losing one was an unacceptable loss, not to mention that there was still King Onliang, Shi Zhongyue, a great cultivator at the 2nd level of primordial spirit realm, who had cultivated the Dharma body of void return. King Onliang, Shi Zhongyue, and Dao Venerable Star Dipper were also loyal followers of Qin Emperor Stonefeather. Lin Feng smiled faintly. "You're too polite, fellow Taoist. I've met Prince Onliang and Taoist Star Dipper once in the past. Since I've seen them suffering this time, I'll naturally take care of them." Stonefeather was calm about how Lin Feng addressed him. Today he didn't bring his guard of honor and wore ordinary clothes. He was talking to Lin Feng as a cultivator. Lin Feng looked down at West Tomb City and said with a smile, "I believe that in the near future, I will bring my disciples to disturb you. I hope you won't blame me then." Stonefeather's entire body was shrouded in a golden mist, making it impossible to see his expression. His voice was graceful and calm. "The Great Qin Empire welcomes Sect Master Lin and Xianmen Tianzong to visit at any time." Lin Feng smiled. "In that case, I'll bid you farewell. Dao friend, please wait." He retreated and escaped into the void. Slowly, Stonefeather nodded. The golden mist around him became increasingly dazzling. Finally, he turned into a ball of golden light and descended into West Tomb City. In the center of West Tomb City, in the main hall of the Great Qin Empire's Imperial Palace, a middle-aged man wearing a crown and a dragon robe sat on the dragon throne, overflowing with the aura of an emperor. After the golden light entered the main hall, it retracted into the middle-aged man's glabella. In the main hall stood a man who looked like a scholar. He was no longer dressed in plain clothes, but had changed into court attire. However, he still looked simple and elegant. This person had a scholarly appearance, and his eyes were deep like the ocean, encompassing everything, but also bottomless and unfathomable. This was the Great Qin Empire's current Minister of Power, Wu Qingru. Even standing in front of Qin Emperor Stonefeather, Wu Qingru still had a calm appearance. Slowly, Stonefeather said, "Qingru, the situation has changed." Wu Qingru nodded. The original plan was to guide the Shushan Sword Sect and the Great Zhou Empire to restrain each other, to prevent them from taking advantage of the chaos while the Great Qin is cleaning up internal threats. But now, it seems that the conflict between Xianmen Tianzong and the Shushan Sword Sect is showing signs of intensifying ahead of time. Xianmen Tianzong's strength is also higher than expected. Stonefeather did not speak and looked calmly at Wu Qingru. Wu Qingru also had a calm appearance. After a moment of silence, he said indifferently, "Since that's the case, then we might as well adjust the plan and drag the Shushan Sword Sect into it. With the combined strength of the Great Qin, the Great Zhou, and Xianmen Tianzong, we'll deal a heavy blow to Shushan together." Stonefeather looked up at him and said indifferently, "Oh, Qingrou's suggestion is different from before." Wu Qingru smiled slightly. "Your Majesty is wise. I do indeed have a new idea. If it was in the past, I would completely terminate the original plan, and not let conflict erupt between Shushan and the Great Zhou Empire. Shushan has Xianmen Tianzong to restrain them. As for the Great Zhou Empire, we can use the Reincarnation Sect's hidden pawns to draw the Great Zhou Empire into a fight with the Reincarnation Sect. This will also make it impossible for the Great Zhou Empire to be distracted and interfere with the internal cleanup process of the Great Qin Empire." Wu Qingrou's tone was calm and indifferent. In reality, He had never mentioned the reincarnation sect to Stonefeather before. They were not hidden pawns planted by the Great Qin Empire, but pawns planted by Wu Qingru himself. After hearing this, the Great Qin Emperor Stonefeather similarly did not blink. He did not express the slightest bit of surprise. He only looked at Wu Qingru silently, waiting for him to finish. Wu Qingru continued, "The reason why I changed my original plan is because I know that Shi Tianhao, the disciple of the master of the mysterious gate, will definitely fight with the dual-pupiled person of the Shi clan in the future. The original plan was to use this opportunity to use the power of Xianmen Tianzong to help the Great Qin attack the power of the aristocratic families. But now it seems that the pressure on Xianmen Tianzong is a little too great." Stonefeather's expression did not change. He said indifferently, "Qingrou's words have a hidden meaning. It seems that the dual-pupiled person has found a new backer. You changed your mind and attacked Shushan, just to reduce the variables in the plan?" Wu Qingru smiled. "Your Majesty is wise. In the battle between the two stones, the Great Qin can either be impartial, or help Xianmen Tianzong and support that little stone. Since your Majesty has the intention not to participate in this battle, and Big Stone has found a new backer, if Shushan also joins in and becomes enemies with Xianmen Tianzong, the pressure on Little Stone and Xianmen Tianzong will be too great. If one side completely suppresses the other, it will only increase the power of the victor. Both sides will suffer. This is the most beneficial choice for the Great Qin dynasty." Silently, Stonefeather glanced at Wu Qingru. "It is not only beneficial for the Great Qin, right?" Wu Qingru smiled calmly. "Your Majesty's eyes are like a torch. Naturally you can see through it." Stonefeather nodded. "Since that is the case, I will leave it to you, Qingru." Wu Qingru bowed. "Your subject obeys." There was silence between the ruler and subject. Their gazes looked towards the western sky, where the Kunlun Mountains were. At this time, Lin Feng had already urged Mount Yujing to return to the Kunlun Mountains. He sat at the peak of the mountain, smiling as he watched Xiao Yan, Shi Tianhao, and the others study the cloud forest trees that they had obtained. Other than Zhu Yi, who was still a little calm, the others were all beaming with joy. The four of them had each been given an entire cloud forest tree. They could freely use it. From now on, it was completely their private property. Kong Nanhua, Miao Shihao, Jieyu, Kuei King, and the others did not come empty-handed. Lin Feng still had an entire cloud forest tree, which he had prepared for the protectors, elders, and demon kings. Although it was not like Xiao Yan and the others who could enjoy a cloud forest tree alone, it was definitely generous. With their current Yuaniing cultivation, it would take a long time for them to completely digest it. The cloud forest tree obtained this time was definitely a windfall for Xianmen Tianzong. It would greatly enhance the overall strength of the sect. Although Jun Zining was born in the ancient Yuantian world, she was well educated and naturally understood the value of the cloud forest tree. She could understand that everyone was sharing a tree, but when she saw Xiao Yan and the others, including Yu Hongyan who was still in the foundation establishment stage, each get a tree, she immediately felt dizzy. The value of a cloud forest tree, especially one that was tens of thousands of years old, was already immeasurable. If the 7 great clans of the ancient Yuantian world obtained it, without exception, they would definitely treat it like a treasure and carefully cultivate it. They would mark out the most fertile land with the most spiritual energy as a forbidden area for planting. Not to mention outsiders, even their own family members were not allowed to easily approach it. If a junior dared to sneak in, both of their legs would be broken, and they would be thrown into confinement. If a branch was damaged, it would not be surprising if their cultivation was destroyed, and they were imprisoned until death. If anyone dared to have any ideas about this cloud forest tree, they would definitely have a grudge that would not end until one of them died. This was because this cloud forest tree could allow the strength of a powerful cultivator clan to skyrocket, allowing the entire clan to reach a higher level and produce a qualitative leap. And surrounding this cloud forest tree, other clans would definitely be envious. They would send spies to lurk, or even directly attack and seize it. Clans that own the spirit tree would definitely not yield, and would definitely protect it to the end. But such a precious thing, each of Shi Tianhao and the others had one. Moreover, they were not planting it, but directly extracting its spiritual energy for cultivation. Such extravagance made Jun Zining feel that her previous worldview had completely collapsed. Even Taishu Temple, Mount Shu Sword Sect, the Great Zhou Dynasty, and the Great Qin Dynasty would not dare to play like this. Lin Feng smiled at the scene in front of him and thought to himself, I admit that doing this is a bit like a nouveau riche, but money can't buy my willingness. As long as I think it's worth it, it's fine. I have the capital to be a tycoon. What can you do to me? Even Yan Nanlai, Liang Pan, and the others were shocked to see such extravagance. They felt that it was not worth it, a waste, a nouveau riche and a petty person. But Lin Feng felt that it was worth it. Again, what Xiao Yan and the others lacked the least was potential and talent. What they lacked the most was time. If they could use resources to speed up their growth, they would soon tell everyone that Lin Feng's investment was definitely worth it. Smiling and shaking his head, Lin Feng was about to enter the lottery system. Suddenly his heart trembled slightly. He felt that someone in the outside world was trying to use the sound transmission crystal to contact the people on the mountain. Chapter 471. Yujing Mountain was managed by Lin Feng like an iron bucket. No water could get in. Any magical power that came in contact with the cyclic purple qi around the mountain would alarm Lin Feng. After Lin Feng carefully sensed it, he found that someone from the outside world was trying to contact Jun Zining with the voice transmission crystal. As far as Lin Feng knew, the voice transmission crystal in the little girl's hand could only be used to contact one person. It was neither her family nor the people from Zixiao Path, but her close friend Luo Qinggu. This made Lin Feng a little curious. He didn't expect that Luo Qinggu, who had lost contact with him for half a year, would actually contact Jun Zining at this time. Lin Feng left a trace of magical power in Luo Qingwu's heavenly spirit pearl, which allowed him to roughly grasp Luo Qingwu's physical condition. The feedback was not very optimistic. The little girl's heavenly spirit pearl did not improve, and was still on the verge of shattering. Lin Feng could feel that there was an external force intervening, hoping to repair the heavenly spirit pearl, but in the end, it was to no avail. Luo Qingwu had completely stopped her cultivation during this period of time. She did not breathe in and out the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into her body, relying on the power of Lin Feng's bipolar divine flower petals. She barely ensured that the heavenly spirit pearl would not shatter. However, if the problem could not be solved, Luo Qingwu could not continue to cultivate. The situation was in a stalemate. Otherwise, she could allow the heavenly accumulating dark spirit pearl to be completely shattered. In that case, she could continue to cultivate, but Luo Qingwu's outstanding innate talent would be ruined. Her 9 points of bone potential fell to only 5 points. It was not that bad. After all, her other points were very good. Even if the heavenly spirit pearl was shattered, the total value of her 4 potential talents was still 26 points. However, others did not have a talent detector like Lin Feng, so they could not judge a person's potential so directly. In their eyes, Luo Qingwu, who had lost the heaven-accumulating dark soul pearl, was undoubtedly ordinary. Her future achievements would be limited, and she would no longer be the favored one. Therefore, whether it was Lin Feng, Luo Qi, or Jun Zining, none of them were optimistic that Luo Qingwu would still be treated as well as before when she returned to the Luo family. As long as Luo Qingwu was willing, she would be able to contact Lin Feng through the magic power that Lin Feng had left behind. This was also the foreshadowing that Lin Feng had deliberately left behind. But who knew that the little guy had gone back for half a year, and there was no news of him at all? No one obstructed her, and no one tampered with the mana left by Lin Feng. Not contacting Lin Feng was entirely the little lowly's own intention. This made Lin Feng feel strange, but he was just curious. If the little lowly continued to live a carefree life, it would not be a bad thing. After all, she was just a little girl who was less than 10 years old. Being doted on by her family, it would be warmer and happier. As Lin Feng thought about it, he allowed the voice transmission to connect. Sister Zining. Hearing Luo Qingwu's voice, he confirmed that it was the little lowly who transmitted her voice and not someone else. After receiving the voice transmission crystal, Lin Feng cut off his own mana. He did not intend to listen to the private conversation between the little girls. But even though he did not intend to listen, someone took the initiative to tell him. Looking at Jun Xining's confused face in front of him, Lin Feng had an ominous intuition. What is it? Jun Xining's pair of delicate willow leaf-arched eyebrows were completely wrinkled and twisted into a knot. Facing Lin Feng, she said hesitantly, Senior, Junior has something to tell you, but I don't know how to say it. Thinking of Luo Qingwu's Dharma Power voice transmission just now, Lin Feng looked at Jun Xining, who was so confused that she wanted to die, and felt slightly frightened. He said as if nothing had happened. What's the matter? Just say it. Jun Xining said hesitantly, that Qingwu contacted me. She carefully raised her head and glanced at Lin Feng, asking probingly. Senior Qingwu, do you still remember? She was with me in Kunlun Mountain, wearing red clothes. Nonsense, how can I not remember? Lin Feng curled his lips in his heart, but on the surface he looked calm. Her name is Luo Qingwu, right? I have an impression of her. Jun Xining nodded repeatedly. Yes, that's right. It's her. Well, she just contacted me. Lin Feng looked at her silently, waiting for her to continue. Since she had already started, Jun Xining simply let go of all her scruples and asked boldly, Senior, I remember I once asked you if Xiao Wu's Heaven-Yin Spirit Pearl had a chance to recover. At that time, you said it would depend on her luck. At that time, it was still too early to say. I don't know now. Lin Feng understood in his heart. As expected, my feeling was not wrong. Her Heaven-Yin Spirit Pearl has indeed not recovered. He nodded slightly. Yes, I did say that. Now, I have a certain degree of confidence in repairing her Heaven-Yin Spirit Pearl. Jun Xining's face suddenly showed surprise, but after the surprise her expression became even more confused. The ups and downs in her expression made Lin Feng feel a little puzzled. What happened? Speak clearly. Although Lin Feng's tone was calm, his temperament was now more and more profound. To the people around him, he was more and more dignified. Jun Xining swallowed her saliva as if her tongue was half short. She hesitantly explained the contact between Luo Qingwu and herself. As Lin Feng listened, his eyes gradually began to stare blankly, and he felt more and more dumbfounded. If one word must be used to highly condense Lin Feng's mood at the moment, then two words were the most suitable. Pain in the ass. It was so painful that it was about to break. Lin Feng now finally understood why Jun Xining was so confused. He was even more confused than Jun Xining at the moment. His Luo Qi's and Jun Xining's premonition was not bad. After Luo Qingwu, whose heavenly accumulating dark spirit pearl was on the verge of shattering, returned to the Luo clan in the ancient Yuan-Tian world, she did not even have the time to enjoy the love and warmth of her family when she was quickly doused with a basin of cold water. After using all kinds of methods to repair the damage of the Heaven-Yin Spirit Pearl, Luo Qingwu's status in the Luo clan plummeted. Except for a few close relatives who loved and pitied her even more, in other aspects, she had completely fallen from the clouds to the bottom of the valley. What was especially hard for Luo Qingwu to accept was that the few treasures that she had cherished the most since she was young were also going to be taken back. Those were originally the protective treasures and treasures that were given to her by her clan to aid in cultivation. Now that Luo Qingwu's talent was wasted, the Luo clan decided to take them back. But for Luo Qingwu, those were treasures that had accompanied her since she could remember. In her heart, the significance of those treasures was not as simple as a few cultivation treasures. This made the little lowly quite sad and bitterly disappointed. At this time, the foreshadowing that Lin Feng had planted should have come into effect, but something unexpected happened. Looking at the deeply hurt Luo Qingwu, Luo Qi could not bear to see her like this, so he mentioned Lin Feng to the other masters of the clan, saying that Lin Feng cared for Luo Qingwu very much, and that the little lowly was very congenial with him. Luo Qi was actually a little guilty when he said this. He did not know that Lin Feng had planted magical power in Luo Qingwu's body, and it was even more impossible for him to guess Lin Feng's thoughts. He only said this to prevent Luo Qingwu's status in the clan from falling too badly. But as a result, the other Yuanying patriarchs of the Luo clan began to have other thoughts. After losing the Heaven-Yin Soul Pearl, Luo Qingwu's genius halo was gradually disappearing. In the future, she was very likely to be used as a bargaining chip for the clan's marriage alliance. If what Luo Qi said was true, that Luo Qingwu and Lin Feng were congenial, then why not just send Luo Qingwu to Lin Feng and see if she could become his disciple? Lin Feng knew that Luo Qingwu's heaven-en soul pearl was broken. Under such circumstances, Luo Qingwu was still congenial to him. Perhaps the Luo clan could use this to turn a waste into a treasure, and use a female junior with a limited future to establish a relationship with the rising sun of Xianmen Tianzong? After the Battle of Mount Kunlun, the news of the destruction of the Wind God sect and the suppression of the Golden Crow Sage by Lin Feng spread throughout the world. Xianmen Tianzong had officially stepped onto the broad stage of the Divine Land. He had become a new generation of powerhouses that many factions looked up to. Even the primordial soul realm patriarchs of the Luo clan had tacitly agreed to the suggestion of the other clan members after receiving the news. If Luo Qingwu's heaven-accumulating dark spirit pearl was not broken, and she had a bright future, then the Luo family might have to think about it. But now that Luo Qingwu, who had faded into the crowd, could establish a relationship with the celestial sect of the Xianmen sect, which was in the limelight in the vast land of the Divine Land, if this investment was successful, it would be totally worth it. Luo Qi also remained silent on this matter. He only hoped that Lin Feng did not do it on a whim, but that he really loved and valued Luo Qingwu and was willing to accept her as a disciple. This might be a blessing in disguise for Luo Qingwu. In particular, Luo Qi also vaguely felt that Lin Feng might have a way to repair Luo Qingwu's heaven-en soul pearl. If this matter ended here, then everything would still be quite good, and Lin Feng could still get what he wanted. However, the Luo clan ignored the opinion of one person, the little loli herself. Originally, the foreshadowing that Lin Feng had laid down was about to take effect. The depressed Luo Qingwu already had the idea of contacting Lin Feng. It was not that she wanted to leave her clan, but she just wanted to temporarily leave this suddenly unfamiliar and cold environment. She wanted to find someone to pour out her troubles to. However, at this time, she found out that the elders of her clan wanted to gift her to Lin Feng as a gift to form a good relationship with Xianmen Tianzong. Although everyone put on a look of good for her, saying that it was a blessing in disguise, Luo Qingwu only felt cold all over. Even the last trace of warmth in her heart was about to disappear. Incidentally, even the impression of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong in her heart took a turn for the worse. The little loli immediately threw a tantrum. She didn't say a word all day long, and she didn't even want to eat. She was unwilling to go to Xianmen Tianzong no matter what. The Luo clan was very troubled by this. After all, they sent Luo Qingwu to Xianmen Tianzong to be apprenticed to a master, and to interact with people on a daily basis. They did not really want to send a mindless, lifeless commodity. The little loli could not do her job well. If she was sent to Yujing Mountain, she would only be rude and offend people. The Luo clan wanted to establish a good relationship with Xianmen Tianzong, not to cause trouble between the two parties. Therefore, things came to a deadlock. As time dragged on, many of the Luo clan lost their patience. The elders were still fine, but there were more and more rumors among the younger generation. The words became more and more unpleasant, and Luo Qingwu's situation became worse and worse. The little loli became more and more bitter, so she threw a tantrum. As for the contact information that Lin Feng left for her, it was completely useless. After understanding the whole story, Lin Feng didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Damn, she looks so obedient, but she's actually a naughty child? As for the people of the Luo clan, Lin Feng wanted to kill them at this moment. As the old saying goes, don't be afraid of a godlike opponent, but be afraid of a pig-like teammate. Forcefully suppressing his pounding and aching temples, Lin Feng's mouth twitched slightly as he looked at Jun Zining. What's the situation now? Chapter 472. For Lin Feng, he had never been afraid of a godlike opponent. It was not a big deal to lose if he was not as strong. What he was most afraid of was a pig-like teammate. It was definitely a pain in the ass to lose because of a pig-like teammate when he was clearly better than the opponent. Lin Feng was having a headache about Luo Qingwu's situation at this time. However, on the surface, he still maintained his calm and looked at Jun Zining indifferently. What is the specific situation now? Jun Zining lowered her head and replied softly. Xiao Wu was placed in a courtyard of the Luo family, accompanied by her mother. A while ago, the Luo family and the Yang family clashed again. This time, the battle was very fierce and there were casualties on both sides. During the conflict, the courtyard where Qinggu lived was broken into. Lin Feng's expression did not change. She fell into the hands of the Yang family? Not really. Jun Zining shook her head and said with some difficulty, but taking advantage of the chaos, she ran out of the courtyard by herself. At that time, there were people from the Great Zhou dynasty coming to the ancient Yuantian world. Xiao Wu sneaked into their carriage and came to the divine land. For a moment, Lin Feng felt his temples throbbing with pain. The 7 major families of the ancient Yuantian world represented the interests of several major forces in the divine land, and the Luo family was backed by the Great Zhou dynasty. Lin Feng knew about this a long time ago, but he did not expect that Luo Qinggu would sneak into the divine land. The people sent by the Great Zhou dynasty to the ancient Yuantian world, regardless of the cultivation of the person in charge, must be smart and capable. It was impossible for him not to notice that a little girl had sneaked into the team. However, he still allowed Luo Qinggu to follow him back to the divine land. It was really hard to predict what he was planning. Perhaps he had already found out about the little girl's identity, but did not know that her Heaven-Een spirit pearl was on the verge of breaking, so he thought she was a rare commodity? This added some trouble to Lin Feng. Unfortunately, because the Luo clan's help was counterproductive, it was not convenient for Lin Feng to look for the little lowly. At least, he could not go before the little lowly's mind came around. Otherwise, even if he brought her back to the mountain, it would only be counterproductive. He wanted to accept a disciple, not kidnap her. That's why I said that naughty kids are really a headache. Lin Feng smiled bitterly in his heart. At this time, I need someone to enlighten her and stop her from being stubborn. It's a pity that I can't do it. No one in Xianmen Tianzong can accept. Lin Feng's gaze fell on Jun Zining in front of him. Jun Zining was looking at him uneasily. In the end, she was just a 12-year-old girl. Lin Feng said calmly, I have some confidence in repairing her divine dark bead. If she is willing, she can come to Yujing Mountain. A happy smile appeared on Jun Zining's face, and she nodded repeatedly. Thank you, Senior. Thank you, Senior. She felt a faint sense of uneasiness in her heart just now. She felt that she was too rash and told Lin Feng about Luo Qinggu throwing a tantrum. She was afraid that Lin Feng would be unhappy because of it, but now it seemed that Lin Feng did not mind. This made Jun Zining let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, Senior Lin is a magnanimous person. Otherwise, I would have harmed Xiao Wu instead. But then, Jun Zining began to worry again. Lin Feng would not lower himself to a child's level, but if Luo Qinggu wanted to repair her Heaven-Een spirit pearl, she would definitely have to go up the mountain to seek medical help. It was impossible for Lin Feng to go up the mountain to look for her. Jun Zining's little face became tangled again. She could tell from the magical power transmission with Luo Qinggu that Luo Qinggu was still confused. How could she take the initiative to go up the mountain to seek medical help in such a situation? Thinking that her little sister was injured and had the Heaven-Een spirit pearl broken because she accompanied her out to relax, Jun Zining felt quite uncomfortable. After thinking about it, she said to Lin Feng, Senior, I want to find Xiao Wu and bring her up the mountain. Please allow me. She made up her mind to find Luo Qinggu and enlighten her first. She would say more good things about Lin Feng, so that she would at least be willing to go up the mountain to seek medical help. Jun Zining felt that she had to be fast. If it dragged on for too long, Lin Feng would change his mind, and it would be too late to cry. Lin Feng said in his heart, It's naturally for the best that you are willing to take the initiative to bring it up. He nodded indifferently and said indifferently, It's okay, you can go on your own. Looking at Jun Zining, Lin Feng calmly pointed to Burning Heaven Cliff where Xiaoyan lived in the distance. Go there to find my eldest disciple Xiaoyan and borrow the Black Cloud flag from him. The Great Zhou dynasty is more than 10,000 miles away from Kunlun Mountain. The Black Cloud flag can help you travel. For such a long distance, Only the power of the Yuanying stage could break through space and escape. If they walked slowly, who knew how long it would take? If it was Xianmen Tianzong's own disciple, Lin Feng would directly send Kuei Niuqing or Jieyu to escort her. However, Jun Zining had not entered the sect at the moment, and was only living as a guest. It would be a bit too much to ask a demon king like Jieyu to escort her. If it was a Yuanying stage magic weapon, Jun Zining had not built her foundation yet, so she really could not activate it. Only the golden elixir period black cloud flag that could move through the void was suitable for her. Jun Zining was overjoyed and bowed. "Thank you, senior." She immediately went to Burning Heaven Cliff to ask Lin Feng for the treasure. Lin Feng watched Jun Zining leave and said in his heart, "Don't rush, I hope you won't disappoint me." After sending the little girl away, Lin Feng pondered for a moment, and called Dao Jiqiang. The middle-aged man came to Lin Feng and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, sect master." Lin Feng looked at Dao Jiqiang, and could not help but smile. To be fair, Dao Jiqiang's cultivation talent was mediocre. Under normal circumstances, if he could advance to the golden elixir period and form a yellow core, that would be his limit. Even in a holy place for cultivation like Mount Yujing. And with Lin Feng's help, the hope of him forming a Yuanying stage in this lifetime was infinitely close to zero. However, his ability to handle daily affairs was absolutely worthy of recognition. He was careful, smart, and capable. As an outer sect steward, he was definitely making the best use of his abilities. Before Dao Jiqiang came up the mountain, Xianmen Tianzong's daily chores were basically shared by Kong Nanhua and Zhu Yi. With Dao Jiqiang, the two of them were liberated, and Dao Jiqiang did a very good job. All kinds of trivial matters were handled in an orderly manner, and he was conscientious. This person was also very perceptive. He tried his best to carry out the tasks that were given to him perfectly. He did not say or ask too many questions about other things, and he kept his ears and mouth shut. Lin Feng looked at Dao Jiqiang and slowly said, "Today, I will let Tianqi Sect's Songqing Yuan go down the mountain." Dao Jiqiang did not say anything. He stood respectfully in front of Lin Feng, silently listening to Lin Feng. Lin Feng said lightly, "You don't have to worry about your daughter. When Songqing Yuan returns this time, he will not make things difficult for your daughter without confidence. Instead, he will treat her well." Dao Jiqiang heaved a sigh of relief and bowed again. "Thank you, sect master. I am very grateful." Lin Feng nodded and released his mana, sending Dao Jiqiang away. Purple Qi surged and brought Songqing Yuan before him. For the past few days, Songqing Yuan had been under house arrest on Yujing Mountain. His movements were restricted to a stone chamber. However, he was also very perceptive and did not dare to act rashly. He patiently waited for Lin Feng's punishment. Although there were times when he was anxious and uneasy, he was generally calm. Usually, he cultivated alone in the stone chamber on Yujing Mountain, and tried to figure out Taoist techniques. The disciples of Xianmen Tianzong are really lucky. The spirit qi on Yujing Mountain is so abundant. Not to mention my Tianqi sect's mountain gate. Even the sacred ground deep in the mountain gate's cave abode might not be comparable. If it was not for the fact that he was almost a prisoner, Songqing Yuan would have stayed on the mountain and not left. Now that he saw Lin Feng again, even with Songqing Yuan's state of mind, he could not help but feel a little uneasy. He bowed and said, "Junior Songqing Yuan greets the master of Xianmen Gate. Senior, may you be safe." Lin Feng asked lightly, "How have you been these days?" "It's my luck to be able to cultivate in seclusion in Senior's mountain gate." Songqing Yuan paused and still said frankly, "It's just that in order to avoid the worries of the elders in the sect, I still hope to return to the northern snow mountain and Tianqi Lake. I hope Senior can allow it." A faint smile appeared at the corner of Lin Feng's mouth. "That's naturally not a problem. Send my regards to your master." After saying that, he directly sent Songqing Yuan down the mountain with his supernatural power. Looking at the scene that suddenly changed in front of him, looking at the vast Kunlun mountain, Songqing Yuan was slightly stunned. Then he took a deep breath and raised his head to look at the void. He remembered that he had accidentally seen Dao Jiqiang from afar. The other party seemed to be moving freely on the mountain. Maybe. Songqing Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes. I should go back and report to master as soon as possible. Lin Feng sat on the mountain, his gaze piercing through the void and looking at Song Qingyuan's back. He could not help but smile. Naturally, he could not let Dao Jiqiang specially run to Song Qingyuan to show his face. That would be too obvious. It was good as it was now. People always liked to treat the scene that they accidentally encountered with their own eyes as reality. After dealing with Song Qingyuan and Dao Jiqiang, Jun Zining also asked for the black cloud flag from Xiaoyan, and came to bid farewell to Lin Feng. She was also sent down the mountain by Lin Feng to the Great Zhou dynasty to look for Luo Qinggu. Now let's begin. Lin Feng's consciousness entered the lottery system. He did not even look at the dice lottery system and the roulette lottery system. He directly entered the lottery system. The items to be drawn in the dice lottery system and the roulette lottery system were specific and were selected by the system. However, the lottery system was different. Before drawing a lot, one could first choose an item they wanted in the exchange system, then choose an item from their current items and give it to the system as a chip. Finally, they would draw a lot. Drawing a red lot was a special prize. They could directly get the item they chose in the exchange system. It was equivalent to using a chip to exchange for the item, even if the original price of the item was tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of exchange points. From the Desolate Sea Assembly to the Battle of Kunlun Mountain destroying the Wind God sect, then to the Kuanpeng's treasury and the great harvest of the Cloud Forest world. Lin Feng had already accumulated enough chips just for this day. If he's going to play this time, then he's going to play big. Lin Feng opened the exchange system page. He did not look at the items in front and directly scrolled to the bottom of the menu. He stared at the last few items on the list and chuckled. What dice? What roulette? Go to the side. This brother will use enough lottery chances and enough chips to forcefully smash a few good things. Chapter 473. The last few items in the exchange system could be exchanged for in the tens of thousands of points. These few items had never appeared randomly in the dice and roulette systems before, which made Lin Feng suspect that once they exceeded 10,000 points, they might not be able to be drawn through the dice and roulette lottery systems. In terms of points, the most expensive item that the two lottery systems had produced so far was the Heaven Spirit Replenishing Pill, which was worth 8,000 points. The exception was the Sect Construction Token, which could not be found in the exchange system and could not be valued. So Lin Feng had been accumulating many lottery chances and enough chips. Using the lottery system, he used the method of a red lot special prize item to exchange for what he wanted. The first to bear the brunt was the 33 Days Fortune Immortal Pill. This was a system-specific item that did not exist in the Great Heaven Primordial World. Its effect was to be consumed by cultivators below the Primordial Soul stage, and could directly advance by a small realm. Even if one advanced from the middle stage of Yuanying to the late stage of Yuanying, it could be done in one go, and there were no side effects. Its effects were heaven-defying. If a late-stage Yuanying, golden elixir, or foundation establishment cultivator consumed it, it could increase the chances of breaking through a major realm. This pill could only be consumed once in a person's lifetime, and it would be ineffective the second time. From the first time this pill appeared in the exchange system, Lin Feng had his eyes on it. However, it was obvious that the best time to consume this pill was during the Yuanying period, which could maximize its value. Therefore, Lin Feng had been holding back. Of course, another reason why he didn't make a move is that the exchange price of this thing is just too high. The most expensive pill in the exchange system currently costs several tens of thousands of points. All of the points that Lin Feng has ever obtained in his life are not enough. However, it was different this time. Lin Feng directly used the lottery system's method of gambling for the red lot to get this thing. Lin Feng had obtained half of the ancient Kuanpeng's body. Tens of thousands of years ago, countless cultivators and demons had died in the belly of the Kuanpeng. Therefore, there were many good things left in the belly of the Kuanpeng. The Virokana that Zhu Yi had found and the stone sword that Shi Tianhao had obtained were just two of them. This time, Lin Feng directly threw a fairly good Yuanying magic weapon. The lottery system appeared, and there were 30 sticks on top of it. 3 red sticks. Lin Feng frowned slightly. There were a maximum of 6 red sticks, which meant that there was a 20% chance of success. There were only 3 red sticks, which meant that the system had judged that Lin Feng had not put enough chips. In addition to the 3 red lots, there were 10 long white lots that randomly drew items. There were 12 long white lots that returned the mortgage chips and wasted a lucky draw chance. There were 5 short white lots that returned empty-handed. After the lottery began, 30 sticks fell into the lottery pot and spun rapidly in the pot. After a while they stopped, and all the sticks were placed in the pot silently. The exposed parts of the sticks were exactly the same. There was no difference in appearance. Lin Feng did not waste any time. He directly used his luck and randomly picked one. After the stick floated out of the pot, a smile immediately appeared on Lin Feng's face. It was red. Haha, good luck. Lin Feng smiled. His luck today was really not bad. The first round and his wish came true. Moreover, it was a 10% chance that he got it. The 33 days fortune immortal pill that the system had paid for appeared in front of Lin Feng. Just as Lin Feng was about to grab the pill actually trembled slightly, as if it wanted to fly out. Lin Feng smiled and used his dermic powers to hold the pill. As expected, it is the same as the Heaven Spirit replenishing pill. High-grade pills can condense their own pill spirit. The 33 days fortune immortal pill's spirituality is also better than the Heaven Spirit replenishing pills. The 33 days fortune immortal pill was not big. It was only the size of a person's thumb. Its shape was not smooth and round, and it did not even look like a solid object. Instead, it was formed by the gathering of a constantly rolling cloud. But Lin Feng didn't even need to use his own divine sense and magic power to explore. He could feel that within that seemingly small cloud, there seemed to be an infinitely vast space condensed here. Like an immortal palace in heaven, the 33 heavens. Lin Feng felt it, and realized that the 33 days fortune immortal pill was a projection of the laws of many great Daos of heaven and earth, forming the effect of multiple layers of space. If a cultivator consumed it, although they would not be able to directly comprehend the laws of the great Daos, they would be able to get a glimpse of them. It would be very beneficial for their future cultivation. The 33 days fortune immortal pill could no longer be defined as a simple pill. To be precise, it was a condensed projection of the laws of heaven and earth. Using the pill as a vessel, consuming this pill would not only increase a cultivator's realm, but it would also be beneficial for their future cultivation. Consuming it once would benefit them for the rest of their lives. Lin Feng pinched the pill, pondering in his heart. A nascent soul stage magic item in exchange for such a good item. It's simply a huge profit. Just that I don't know if the Heavenly Gold Pavilion can derive the complete pill formula or not. The 33 days fortune immortal pill was so special. Even if the pill formula was derived, it would be quite difficult to refine it. Even so, Lin Feng was extremely happy. This pill could be said to be the sex cornerstone. If it could be mass-produced, it would definitely make Xianmen Tianzong's strength improve by leaps and bounds. Lin Feng put the pill away with a smile, then continued to draw the lottery. With the 33 days fortune immortal pill as a base, Lin Feng's mentality was much more relaxed. It was as if he was sweeping up the goods during a sale. He specifically stared at the last few items in the exchange system, the ones with the highest value and the most expensive exchange price. There were successes and failures in the lottery. Some were like the 33 days fortune immortal pill, which resulted in a red lot. There were also times when he drew a white lot and his chips were returned, wasting a lottery chance. There was even one time when he was unlucky and drew a short white lot. Not only did he not get what he wanted, he even lost the chips he had mortgaged. However, Lin Feng's wealth was too great this time. Even the system had to admit defeat. The Heavenly Soul Cloudy Stone was the 4th last item in the exchange system's list of items. It required 18,000 points to exchange. Its appearance was a pure white stone with elegant cloud patterns on its surface. It was overflowing with spiritual energy. It was the most famous top refining material in the entire Tianyuan world. Its value could not even be described as being worth a city. It was completely priceless. There were very few solid stones, but they were born in the clouds in the sky. Moreover, there was no pattern to its condensation. However, its effects were extremely heaven-defying. It naturally contained the secrets of space, and had the effect of recovering one's vitality. As long as a little bit of it was added into the ritual implement would have the effect of traversing through space and traversing the void. Moreover, if the magic tool was damaged, it could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on its own to slowly repair the damage. For cultivators who had formed Yuanying stage or possessed Yuanying stage magic tools, it did not seem to have much effect. However, for cultivators with lower cultivation, it was definitely a rare treasure. For cultivators whose cultivation was below the Yuanying stage, adding a little heavenly soul cloudy stone when refining the magic tool could also allow them to understand the mystery of space in advance and increase their chances of forming a nascent soul. Unlike the teachings of a master, this was something that they could comprehend on their own and truly understand the true meaning. If this kind of spiritual stone appeared in the world, it would definitely cause all the major forces to fight for it. Just a little bit of heavenly soul cloudy stone could be used. The heavenly soul cloudy stone that Lin Feng had drawn from the lottery could be divided into thousands of pieces without a problem. Other than the heavenly soul cloudy stone, there was also the tranquil jade. This was the second last item on the list of items. Its price was much more expensive than the 33 Days Fortune Immortal Pill, which was the third last item. It cost a total of 50,000 exchange points. On the surface, the tranquil jade was inconspicuous. It was just a small emerald jade pendant. However, this precious jade could trigger a fragrance called the tranquil fragrance, which would allow cultivators to enter the mysterious state of thoughtless tranquil. The world had just begun, and chaos had just begun. A mother giving birth to a baby was most suitable for this state of chaos. When a person was still a baby, their mind would be empty, and they would be half awake. This was the cultivation state that every cultivator dreamed of. The mind would be in chaos, and it was most suitable for the primordial true meaning of the great Tao. This state was known as thoughtless tranquil. When cultivating in this state, the effects would be countless times better than at any other time. Lin Feng himself had only had a few such cultivation experiences under extremely coincidental circumstances. His research into Dermic Tao had indeed improved by leaps and bounds. However, it was impossible for him to enter the state again after that. It was as if the sudden inspiration in his mind could only be obtained by chance, and could not be forced. Most cultivators in this world would never enter the ultimate cultivation state of thoughtless tranquil their entire lives. Of course, once one entered the state, one had to be able to exit it at any time. Otherwise, remaining in a daze would be equivalent to death. The tranquil fragrance triggered by the tranquil jade could allow cultivators to enter this cultivation state at any time. Although there were restrictions on the duration of its activation, and the area that the fragrance could cover, it was still extremely valuable. After all, the thoughtless tranquil realm was something that even first-tier primordial soul realm cultivators could only come across by chance. Second-tier primordial soul realm cultivators could enter the state at will, but they could not succeed every time. Only third-tier primordial soul realm cultivators, or Tao integration mighty figures, could enter the state at any time. The tranquil jade was a treasure that was even better than the 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal Pill. It was a foundational treasure of the sect, and it could allow Lin Feng and his disciples to experience a qualitative leap in strength. The tranquil jade, the 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal Pill, and the Heavenly Soul Cloudy Stone. Other than these three designated treasures that had been obtained with red lots, Lin Feng had also drawn a long white lot that gave him random items. Within the random items, there are trash items that are not of high value, but there are also treasures that Lin Feng is satisfied with. For example, there is a sect construction token. For example, there is a spirit grass called the Spirit Spring Marrow Cleansing Grass. It is the main raw material of the precious marrow cleansing pill. However, at this moment, Lin Feng's full attention was placed on the last item on the exchange system's list of items. He still had 2 lucky draw chances left. He had already used 2 lucky draw chances previously, with the goal of obtaining this final treasure. However, he had failed both times. However, Lin Feng did not plan on giving up. He was determined to obtain this item. Not for anything else, but just for the price of this item, He had to fight for it. The system had fully proven that you get what you pay for. And it was worth every penny. And the exchange price of this final treasure was 300,000 points. Chapter 474. Including the Tranquil Jade, the 33 Days Fortune Immortal Pill, and the Heavenly Soul Cloudy Stone. The exchange price of 300,000 points was almost equal to the total price of all the items in the exchange system. However, what made people speechless was that the item's name was a string of question marks, and the item description was blank. Apart from the price, Lin Feng could only see an image. The image was gray and blurry, and nothing could be seen clearly. However, there was a voice in Lin Feng's heart that told him that it was a huge bell. It was a huge bell. There was no reason and no basis, but when Lin Feng looked at the image, his intuition told him that the thing hidden behind the chaos was a huge bell. The value of this item was not only reflected in its high exchange price of 300,000 points, but also reflected in the fact that after Lin Feng had designated this item as his target through the lottery system, he had provided chips, and the lots were formed. However, there was only one red lot. The lowest probability of getting a red lot was only 1. In other words, the success rate was less than 4%. In the previous 2 draws, Lin Feng had used a very high-quality yuanying magic item for the first time. As a result, there was 1 red lot, 6 long white lots, 9 white lots, and 14 short white lots, which meant that he had lost everything. This kind of situation means that the system has judged that the nascent soul stage magic item that Lin Feng put up is clearly on the low side compared to that big bell. Therefore, in the second draw, Lin Feng bet on a damaged magic item that he had obtained from the Kuanpeng's treasure. This magic item was the same as Shi Tianhao's stone sword. It was undamaged, but the magic item's primordial spirit had been destroyed. Its foundation was still very good, and if a primordial spirit cultivator spent some effort to refine it again, there was a chance that it could return to its peak. This time there were a few more red lots. 2. There were 2 red lots, 9 long white lots, 12 long white lots, and 7 short white lots floating above the lot pot. After failing twice in a row, Lin Feng's interest was piqued. After pondering for a moment, he took out the Water Spirit Heaven Pearl. Among the treasures that Golden Rock Great Sage and Qiongqi Great Sage used to set up the 9 luminaries sky-crumbling formation, the Water Spirit Pearl was used as the carrier of the water celestial star power. It was rich in water spiritual energy, although it was not a magical treasure, nor was it a magical treasure embryo. It was still an extremely precious water treasure. If it fell into the hands of a mighty cultivator who achieved nascent divinity through water element magic, it would also be an excellent material for refining magic treasures. Lin Feng submitted the Water Spirit Pearl to the system, and another 30 sticks appeared on top of the lottery system's pot. 3 red lots, 10 long white lots, 12 white lots, and 5 short white lots. The lottery began and all of them fell into the bucket. After spinning at high speed they stopped. Lin Feng randomly picked one. A white lot meant that he did not get the bell he wanted, nor did he get a random item. The Water Spirit Pearl would not be swallowed and returned as it was, which was equivalent to wasting 1 lottery chance. Lin Feng was not discouraged. Although he only had 1 lottery chance left, Lin Feng was not arrogant or rash. He looked at the Water Spirit Pearl and fell into deep thought. The magical treasure embryo level is far from it. Only a nascent divinity magical treasure will do. After Lin Feng muttered to himself for a while, he handed over the Kasaya with the Mahavairokkana scripture recorded on it to the system. The scripture is already recorded anyways. For Lin Feng the Kasaya is no longer of much value. But a Kasaya with the Vairokkana scriptures recorded on it was priceless, even without the general principles and the Vairokkana palmdermic seal. As expected, this was even better than the Water Spirit Pearl. The system gave him 5 red lots. The lottery system's highest probability was 6 red lots. 5 red lots was already very impressive. Lin Feng was not depressed. Instead, he became even more interested. Not giving me 6. Does it mean that the bell is worth more than ordinary magical treasures? The lottery started, and the sticks spun rapidly in the pot. Soon they landed. This time Lin Feng was not in a hurry. Instead, he paused for a moment before choosing one. When all the sticks floated out of the pot, Lin Feng let out a long sigh. Red. A 1 in 6 chance. He had made the right bet. Haha, 300,000, 300,000. I got the item worth 300,000 points just like that. If I were to exchange it, I wouldn't be able to get 300,000 even if I squeezed all the oil out of my bones, much less sell me. The Kasaya disappeared. Lin Feng waited excitedly for the system to hand over the bell. But after a long time, there was no reaction. Oh, a system malfunction? Lin Feng furrowed his brows. Even though he already knew that the system had no moral integrity and no morals to speak of, always tricking him to no end, but if it tricked him at this critical moment, then Lin Feng would really curse. At that moment, Lin Feng suddenly heard a strange sound. It came from the depths of his soul, but it seemed to pass through endless space. This is the bell? Lin Feng blurted out. The ringing of the bell seemed to have pierced through the final membrane. Within Lin Feng's sea of consciousness, a gray shadow suddenly appeared. As the ringing of the bell reverberated, it gradually became clearer. It was indeed a strange bell. It was full of contradictions. At first glance, it seemed extremely small as a speck of dust. But at the next glance, it seemed extremely large, so large that it covered the sky. A strange feeling of collecting a mustard seed and releasing a mountain peak filled Lin Feng's mind. When he stared at this large bell, it was as if he saw the most primordial chaos. And then following the ringing of the bell, the primordial chaos transformed into the primordial universe, followed by the birth and destruction of billions of stars, all phenomena of the universe. Countless lives were born, and then disappeared. Lin Feng silently watched as one creation after another was born from the primordial chaos. They were divided into two poles. Earth, water, fire, and wind were created. They transformed into all things, constantly developing and evolving. Finally, they decayed and perished, reaching their end. Heaven and earth were destroyed and returned to primordial chaos. Seeing this, Lin Feng already understood the meaning of the bell. This bell was derived from Lin Feng's own Tao. It was derived from the profound true meaning of the Heavenly Virtue Scripture. The Heavenly Virtue Scripture was created by Lin Feng with the help of the system. It was created by fusing various Tao techniques and the laws of the great Tao with the will of heaven and earth. It elaborated on the true meaning of creation. It represented the birth, aging, sickness, and death of life, and the power of the world becoming void. While the system was helping Lin Feng create his own Tao technique, it also automatically created this bell. The bell of creation. This bell was still in its embryonic form. It was a will that only existed in Lin Feng's consciousness. It couldn't even be considered an immortal treasure. However, it was a treasure that completely matched Lin Feng's own Tao technique. It was the most suitable treasure for Lin Feng. When Lin Feng formed his primordial soul and improved his cultivation, it could be used as his Dharma treasure, his natal Dharma treasure. Lin Feng silently stared at the bell of creation in his sea of consciousness. The bell in the void rang with a distant sound. It seemed to have crossed thousands of years and endless space. In the sound of the bell, the huge bell of creation slowly changed. Finally, it turned into a huge stone door. The stone door was pitch black in color. Its surface was covered with thousands of scenes. In the ancient desolation, it exuded a strong aura of life. The first manifestation of the bell of creation, the gate of creation. It represented the birth of infinite life and the creation of infinite things. It contained the primordial chaos to open up one side of creation, and the supreme power to create a side of heaven and earth. Open! In the void of consciousness, Lin Feng shouted at the gate of creation. With a boom, the gate of creation made a muffled sound and slowly opened to both sides. An invisible long river flowed out of the door that opened to both sides. The river flowed ceaselessly. It was neither fast nor slow. However, it had a power that would never stop. The second manifestation of the bell of creation, the river of time. It represented all things and all life. Time passed without return. Everything grew and aged in the long river of time. It contained the power to control the passage of time. As the river of time flowed, Lin Feng's mind also seemed to experience the endless river of history. It flowed straight down, passing through the vicissitudes of all things and experiencing the growth of every life. When the river of time came to an end, an image of a book appeared in front of Lin Feng. The book itself looked ordinary. There was no aura coming out of it. It just looked very simple and desolate. However, a smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. This was the third manifestation of the bell of creation. In the birth, aging, sickness and death, the future, the bad, the void, the book of destruction represented the sickness and bad. It represented the power to control the life and death of all things, and the great power to cause all things to decay and decline. When all things flourished, there would be decline. When all things were created, there would definitely be destruction. From prosperity to decline, from prosperity to weakness. The pages of the book kept flipping. When the book of destruction reached the last page, what appeared in front of Lin Feng was a void of chaos. It was hazy and nothing could be seen clearly. Lin Feng's hand reached into the chaos as if he was holding something. At this moment, even the surrounding chaos and desolation condensed and disappeared. Everything disappeared. Only Lin Feng's palm made a gesture of holding something. Nothingness. This was the last manifestation of the bell of creation. It represented the destruction of all things in the world, returning to nothingness and returning to the primordial chaos. At the same time, it also represented the most terrifying power to destroy all things. Everything would be destroyed and turned into nothingness, no longer existing, not leaving a trace. Birth, aging, sickness and death, the future, the bad, the void. This is creation. Witnessing the evolution of the bell of creation, life, and death, was undoubtedly a valuable experience for Lin Feng. It was almost equivalent to recultivating his Dao technique, causing Lin Feng's understanding of the world's Dao to deepen, and his Dao technique foundation to become more solid. Lin Feng's divine sense gradually left his sea of consciousness. In reality, he opened his eyes and smiled. 300,000 points is worth it. He only had the first 2 chapters of the Heavenly Law Virtue scripture. If he could develop it to the extreme, it would probably be the most powerful Dao technique in the history of the great heaven primordial world. A magic treasure that used the Heavenly Law Virtue scripture as its foundation would definitely be above this world. Therefore, even if it was just a formless thought, it was extremely valuable. Lin Feng looked at the 33 days fortune immortal pills, mind-calming jade, and other treasures in his hands and smiled. The time is completely ripe. Chapter 475. Withdrawing his consciousness from the system, Lin Feng checked his harvest this time, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. The Heavenly Soul Cloudstone, the 33 Days Fortune Celestial Pill, the Tranquil Jade, and the prototype of the Bell of Fortune, he had obtained the 4 most valuable items in the system. Apart from that, he had also obtained a sect leader's residence construction token, and a stock of Spirit Spring Marrow Cleansing Grass. There was no need to mention the construction token, and the Spirit Spring Marrow Cleansing Grass was the main ingredient of the Marrow Cleansing Pill. The Marrow Cleansing Pill was a very famous pill in the great heaven primordial world. It could cleanse the bones and marrow of a cultivator's body, increase the power of the body, and extend their lifespan at the same time. Any cultivator below the Yuanying stage could increase their physical strength with the help of the Marrow Cleansing Pill, and extend their lifespan to a certain extent. Even mortals who didn't cultivate Dao techniques could have the same effect. Yuanying cultivators couldn't increase their lifespan, but they could still cleanse their bodies and strengthen their essence and blood. The recipe for the Marrow Cleansing Pill was widely spread in the great heaven primordial world, but it was still very rare. The reason was that the ingredients were not easy to find, especially the main ingredient, the Spirit Spring Marrow Cleansing Grass, which was almost extinct. Lin Feng put away the items and walked to the Heaven Returning Gold Pavilion, where he used the silver 8 trigrams on the roof to derive the 33 Days Fortune Celestial Pills recipe. The silver 8 trigrams kept flashing, and the derivation this time took longer than the previous times. After a long time, a large number of diagrams and words appeared in the silver light, covering almost the entire Heaven Returning Gold Pavilion. After looking at it, Lin Feng couldn't help but smile bitterly. The ingredients are hard to find. There's still a long way to go. He recorded the recipe and dispersed the silver light. He put away the 33 days fortune celestial pill and slowly walked out of the pill room. After giving some instructions to the others, Lin Feng flew into the mysterious heaven-time light grotto heaven at the top of the treasure tree. There, Tian Chihua was still sleeping soundly, and the huge sword case the size of a small mountain was suppressing the remnant soul of the Golden Crow Great Sage. Meanwhile, the sloppy old man was still playing chess by himself. Lin Feng landed on the top of the small treasure tree and sat down cross-legged. He slowly revolved the Tao art of the Book of Taoism, and the magic power in his body circulated. The essence of the cloud forest tree was continuously absorbed by him. The cyclic purple qi circled around his body and shrouded him. The gate of heaven opened above his head, and as the clear light flashed, the shadow of a 7- or 8-year-old baby floated out. Its facial features were similar to Lin Feng himself. It was his Yuanying. Lin Feng's Yuanying's body was shrouded in a treasured light. The cloud forest tree's essence energy and the cyclic purple qi were constantly being absorbed into his body, and the Yuanying's body was also growing stronger. Its height and physique were also growing. After a long time, Lin Feng's Yuanying had gradually turned into that of a 10-year-old, which meant that he had reached the peak of the middle stage of Yuanying. Lin Feng slowly opened his eyes and thought to himself, "It's time to condense the Dharma of heaven and earth. Once the Dharma of heaven and earth is formed, I will reach the late stage of Yuanying." The bell of creation in his mind rang again, and in the melodious sound, Lin Feng witnessed the birth, development, and decline of worlds one after another until they reached the end and returned to nothingness. The Book of Taoism had 2 chapters, the 4 Symbols Heaven Opening Scripture, and the 8 Trigrams Universal Great Tao Scripture, and they kept appearing in Lin Feng's consciousness. With this as the outline, Lin Feng started to condense the essence of his Tao skills and divine arts to refine the Dharma of heaven and earth. In the late stage of Yuanying, one could cultivate the divine art of heavenly laws and condense the Dharma of heaven and earth. It was extremely powerful. The Dharma of heaven and earth represented the combination and sublimation of the cultivator's divine arts and magic power. The power was at the peak of Yuanying, and it was the manifestation of Yuanying's extreme strength. It was the preparation for the primordial spirit, and in a sense, it could be seen as a demigod. If a late-stage Yuanying cultivator's Dharma of heaven and earth was completely destroyed by others, although his cultivation wouldn't fall to the middle stage of Yuanying, his vitality would be greatly damaged. His power would be even weaker than a middle-stage Yuanying cultivator, and he would need to spend a very long time to refine the Dharma of heaven and earth again. Only when the next Dharma of heaven and earth was formed would he regain his original power. The time needed to refine it was closely related to the time he cultivated in the past. This was because the first Dharma of heaven and earth was equivalent to the condensation of a lifetime's cultivation. If the first was destroyed, the time needed to refine it would be much shorter, but it would still take about half of the time. To condense the Dharma of heaven and earth, the cultivator would need to integrate his lifetime's cultivation into it. The stronger the power of these Tao skills and divine arts, the stronger the power of the Dharma of heaven and earth. But there was a deeper point to pay attention to here. Not all spells were suitable to be refined into the Dharma of heaven and earth. There was a need to choose. The Tao skills and divine arts that were refined into the Dharma of heaven and earth would completely merge with the cultivator's soul. In the future, when the cultivator used the combination of Yuanying and Dharma of heaven and earth to form the primordial spirit, it would merge with the primordial spirit and receive the baptism of the laws of the Tao of heaven and earth, being reborn together. Some Tao skills and divine arts, if their level wasn't high enough, they were destined to be unable to pass the stage of merging with the primordial spirit. Instead, they could disturb the primordial spirit and cause the cultivator to fail in breaking through. So when refining the Dharma of heaven and earth, they had to be abandoned. Lin Feng sat quietly at the top of the treasured tree. Countless scenes flashed through his mind like a horse lantern. Each scene was a layer of Tao skill, true meaning, or the profoundness of a layer of divine arts. Above the 9 heavens, the scene of endless lightning. It belonged to the 9 heavens' heavenly thunder technique. Enduring and unmoving like the earth, calm and deep like a secret, this was the Kitagarbha Sutra. The Buddha transformed into anger. the vertical eye between his eyebrows emitting endless flames of anger, burning everything. This was the art of Akala. Silently flowing the Yellow Springs River, purifying and dispelling everything in the world. This was the art of nirvana of the Yellow Springs. Apart from this, the Heavenly Wind Scripture, Star Luo Technique, Book of Taiyue, Hidden Secret of Quicksand, Art of the Blue Ocean, Scripture of Immeasurable Light, Scripture of Vairocana, Scripture of Great Een, Scripture of Brilliant Sun, Book of Heaven and Earth, Formless Wind God. All the Tao skill books that Lin Feng had either studied or only roughly browsed, they all turned into images, floating and sinking in Lin Feng's sea of consciousness. In the end, they were summed up into a scene. Silently existing in the void, an ancient and desolate bell sat and watched the changes of the world. Thousands of principles were born and developed, multiplied to the peak, and finally, all techniques returned to one, pointing directly to the Tao. The Heavenly Wind Scripture, Star Luo Technique, Book of Taiyue, Hidden Secret of Quicksand, Art of the Blue Ocean and other lower-level Tao skills were eliminated one by one, while the remaining Tao skills turned into talisman characters, engraved on the surface of the Bell of Creation. And as the bell rang, they all shone brightly. Immediately afterwards, all kinds of profound manifestations of magic abilities and martial arts abilities also separately appeared in Lin Feng's sea of consciousness, turning into undulating shadows of light. The Formation 9 Heaven Thunder Summoning, the Martial Path Boundless Flying Sword, the Martial Path White Bone Continuous Hammer, the Escape Technique Cloud Dragon Escape, the Spell Red Lotus Break, the Spell Heaven Cage Sigil, the Spell Minor Reincarnation Technique, and so on. These were the individual abilities that Lin Feng obtained here and there. Violent Thunder Lightning Blade, Xidagarba Golden Body, Akalanatha Fury, Netherworld Puppet, Yellow Springs Finger, Lunar True Water, Nine Heavens Formless Astral Wind, Solar True Fire, and so on. These were the magical abilities that Lin Feng comprehended after comprehending the Nine Heavens Thunder Technique, Lunar Truth, Great Sun Heaven Illuminating Scripture, and so on. 2 World Void Technique Celestial World Barrier, 8 Trigram Sky Collapsing Hammer, Celestial Little World, Universe Shattering, Great Sun God Fist, Heaven Bearing Seal. These are the various powerful abilities that Lin Feng has comprehended on his own after comprehending his own Book of Tao and Tao. Apart from this, the 8 Trigrams Disintegration, Sword of E, Infinite Wind and Lightning, Mandala of Light and Darkness, Finger of the Yellow Springs, Road of the Yellow Springs, River of Forgetfulness, Heavenly Tempest, Divine Spear of Void Annihilation, All Things at the Heart, Great Een Mantra, and other divine abilities were all divine abilities that Lin Feng and his personal disciples comprehended on their own after comprehending the scripture of heavenly virtue that he taught them. Although Lin Feng did not cultivate these magical abilities, he was the source of them. With a casual glance, he could understand the profoundness within them. At this moment, they appeared in his mind one after another. After removing the impurities and retaining the essence, many lower-level Dharma spells were naturally eliminated. The remaining exquisite magical abilities also transformed into characters and shadows that landed on the Bell of Creation in the void. Countless splendor and divine rays circulated around the Bell of Creation. However, there were no changes to the bell itself. It sat there and watched the vast sea flow. It was like a piece of creation that bore the vicissitudes of all things. Lin Feng let out a soft cry, and the Bell of Creation projected a light shadow that landed on Lin Feng's yuanying head. Gradually, it condensed into a human figure. Yujing Mountain suddenly trembled. A portion of the mountain rocks were separated by Lin Feng and transformed into streams of light that entered the mysterious Skytime Cave. The miniature mysterious sky treasure tree beneath Lin Feng also swayed gently. This time, it was not a single branch or leaf that left the tree. Instead, it was a whole bunch of branches and leaves that left the tree trunk and flew towards Lin Feng. With the light shadow projected by the Bell of Creation as the foundation, the Yujing Mountain rocks as the skeleton, and the mysterious sky treasure tree branches as the flesh and skin, a giant that was 2,000 feet tall appeared in the void. Ordinary people who cultivated heaven and earth dharma powers would be less than 1,000 feet tall. The top successor of the Taishi Temple, Pangjia, cultivated the supreme Wangqing Dao of the 2 supreme great Daos of the sect, the supreme and void scriptures. His heaven and earth Dharma powers were just over 1,000 feet tall. Even ordinary essence soul cultivators who manifested their essence soul avatars could only reach a height of about 2,000 feet. Now that Lin Feng had cultivated heaven and earth Dharma powers, he was more than 2,000 feet tall. He stood in the void, his feet stepping on the void and suppressing the heavens. The giant was born with 4 faces and 8 arms. The 4 faces corresponded to the earth, water, fire, and wind after the chaos was shattered. The 8 arms controlled the 8 great creation phenomena of heaven, earth, wind, thunder, water, fire, mountain, and lake. The eyes of the 4 faces were divided into 2 colors, black and white. Countless light shadows flashed in the pupils, evolving the creation of the universe. Silently, the bell of creation floated above the giant's head. Lin Feng and his Yuanying did the same action. Inhaling. Following this action, the heaven and earth Dharma powers that he had condensed also suddenly took a deep breath. The endless cyclic purple chi was absorbed by the heaven and earth Dharma powers. Instantly, Lin Feng's heaven and earth Dharma powers were like a giant god from ancient times. Its hands supported the heavens and its feet stepped on the earth. It was mighty and powerful. Awakening from its slumber. Absolute power, absolute dominance. A powerful concept that could split the heavens and the earth and control creation. This concept of power poured down from the giant's body like a river, pouring into Lin Feng's Yuanying. Lin Feng's Yuanying instantly grew stronger again, breaking through the limit of a 10-year-old. His appearance instantly changed to that of an 11 or 12-year-old. Late Yuanying success. But this was not enough. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He had prepared for so long just for this day. The current him could still obtain more. He swallowed the essence of the entire cloud forest tree in one go. At the same time, Lin Feng took out a medicinal pill. It was the 33 days fortune immortal pill. Breaking through to the late Yuanying stage was not difficult for him. This medicinal pill was originally prepared for Lin Feng to break through 2 realms in a row and directly attack the primordial spirit. Lin Feng swallowed the 33 days fortune immortal pill. The mighty heaven and earth Dharma powers above his head immediately let out a soundless but heaven-shaking roar. Chapter 476. The essence of the entire cloud forest tree was completely swallowed by Lin Feng. The huge amount of spiritual essence almost instantly caused Lin Feng's Yuanying and universal Dharma idol to explode. The cloud forest tree was one of the few spirit trees that were second only to the 4 great spirit plants of heaven and earth. Such a spirit tree had reached 10,000 years of age, and the spiritual essence contained within it was something that even a primordial soul realm expert would need a very long time to completely refine and absorb. Lin Feng's Yuanying immediately became unstable under the impact of the huge amount of spiritual essence. At this moment, the 4-faced 8-armed universal Dharma idol on top of the bell of creation suddenly used its 8 arms to form a seal. Each arm formed a seal. 4 symbols heaven opening technique earth heaven bearing seal. The 4 heaven bearing seals stood up at the same time. Instantly, a grand force that could suppress all turbulence spread out, immediately stabilizing Lin Feng's Yuanying. Lin Feng's Yuanying, which had stabilized once again, immediately formed a heaven-bearing seal and sat down cross-legged. Silently, he absorbed and refined the spiritual essence of the cloud forest tree, which was as vast as the sky and as vast as the sea. As he cultivated, he lost track of time. Lin Feng's Yuanying continued to strengthen as time passed. From the appearance of an 11 or 12-year-old, it grew all the way to the appearance of a 15 or 16-year-old. The appearance of a peak Yuanying would, under normal circumstances, be the appearance of a cultivator when he was about 16 years old. When Lin Feng's Yuanying grew to its limit, he began to drive his universal Dharma idol to absorb the remaining spiritual essence of the cloud forest tree. His universal Dharma idol was extremely powerful to begin with. Therefore, cultivating and strengthening it consumed more resources and energy than other people's universal Dharma idols. Fortunately, the spiritual chi on Yujing Mountain was dense, and with the support of the spiritual essence of the cloud forest tree, Lin Feng's cultivation was twice the result with half the effort. His avatar of heaven and earth was made up of the jade capital mountain rock, the profound heaven treasure tree, and the cyclic purple chi, while the will of the Tao naturally belonged to Lin Feng himself. When Lin Feng pushed his dharma of heaven and earth to the limit, the concept of its power was actually somewhat similar to the 4-in-1 Mount Yujing that Lin Feng had controlled in the past. Although it was much weaker, it was like a smaller version of Mount Yujing. With a slight thought, Lin Feng's avatar of heaven and earth dove into the void and roamed freely in the heavens. Its entire body glowed with 7-colored light as it sliced open the void turbulence. Lin Feng secretly frowned. Could it be that I was too impatient? I have just broken through to the late stage of yuanying, and my foundation is not stable yet, and I want to try to break through to the primordial soul realm? How difficult was it to reach the primordial soul realm? If one does not reach the primordial soul realm, their lifespan will eventually come to an end. Even if they live a peaceful life, on the day their lifespan comes they will still be a cup of dirt. In the late stage of yuanying, the laws of heaven and earth, no matter how they gallop, in the end they only have 60 cycles of 60 years. A lifespan of 3,600 years can be called longevity, but there will always be an end. Only by cultivating to the primordial soul realm can one be at the same time as this world. As long as the world is not destroyed, then naturally their lifespan will be endless, and they can live freely as they please. And since ancient times, how many people have fallen under the primordial soul realm, unable to advance even an inch, and could only sorrowfully watch as their lifespan came to an end. In terms of the probability of a cultivator breaking through, yuanying reaching the primordial soul realm is the most difficult test. As Lin Feng's cultivation gradually grew, he began to come into more and more contact with the world of primordial soul realm cultivators. But in reality, to this day looking back, there are really very few cultivators who can reach the primordial soul realm. The Celeritas Sword Sect, the Hua family, the Yu family, the Blaze Sword Sect, the Wind God Sect. These sects can already be considered to be famous large sects and forces in the vast land of the Divine Continent, but every single one of them also only has one primordial spirit cultivator holding the fort. The Sun-Moon Sword Sect, the Sun and the Moon, the twin swords in harmony, have always been sword companions who cultivate together. Only the sect master, the Sun Glory Sword Venerable, is alone. For thousands of years he has been bitterly waiting for his Moonlight Sword Venerable to appear, but until today he is still alone. The Tianqi sect and the Northern Militant Royal Court, this pair of old enemies rule the northern frontier together. In the game between the Great Zhou and the Great Qin, the two heroes of the northern frontier occupy a very important position, and are fought to be roped in. The Tianqi sect has a total of 3 primordial soul realm cultivators, the sect master Chao Wei, plus the ice and fire elders who live in seclusion in the sacred land, and do not care about worldly affairs. The Northern Militant Royal Court's primordial soul realm cultivators, the Northern Militant Great Chanyu, the Left Virtuous Prince, the Right Virtuous Prince, and the High Priest, a total of 4 people. After the Left Virtuous Prince died under the claws of the ancient Kuanping, there are only 3 left. These forces also have many talented people in their sects, but there are only so few primordial soul realm experts. It is not that they do not want to have more primordial soul realm experts, but the difficulty of achieving the primordial soul realm is simply too high. Like the Sun Glory Sword Venerable, the Celeritas Sword Venerable, Huaxiu, Yuxintao, Chao Wei, and other primordial soul realm experts, in their long lives, have already helplessly watched their juniors exhaust their lifespans in front of them countless times. Their disciples and grand disciples all die of old age one after another, leaving them in the primordial soul realm to helplessly watch this scene. Then they think of ways to train a new generation of geniuses, hoping that someone can stand out. One of the main reasons why the Taishu Temple, the Mount Shu Sword Sect, the Great Zhou Dynasty, and the Great Qin Dynasty are recognized as the 4 most powerful forces in the world, is that they have enough primordial soul realm experts. The Reincarnation sect is in constant internal strife, with serious internal strife. They often fight among themselves, but no one dares to look down on them. The main reason is that each of the 6 paths of reincarnation has at least one primordial soul realm expert. Why is the Taishu Temple recognized as the #1 sacred land of the human race? Even though most of its energy is used to monitor the movements of the demon race in Infinite Wasteland, No one dares to target it. There is only one reason. It is powerful enough to have the largest number of primordial soul realm cultivators in the entire Great Tianyuan world. The Tao Dharma of the Taishu Temple, the essence of the Great Way of Great Void, is known as the Tao Dharma of the human race that is closest to the origin of the Great Tao. The Taishu Temple produces many geniuses, and is known as the concentration camp of geniuses. Even so, many of the descendants of the Taishu Temple have fallen at the threshold of the primordial soul realm. Among them, there is no lack of outstanding talents who have left their names in the history books. Other than Lin Daohan, who had already achieved the primordial spirit on White Cloud Mountain, the other 3 world wayfarers of the Taishu Temple who had recently entered the world to gain experience, none of them had an easy path to the primordial spirit. Pang Jie suffered a huge setback outside the Sand Continent city, and had a bad reputation. He is still cultivating in the White Cloud Mountain, struggling to break through to the primordial soul realm. Yan Mingyue almost died with Long Yi, but she finally broke through the bottleneck and achieved the primordial soul realm. Meng Bingyan is the most miserable. She was unable to advance to the primordial soul realm, even on the day of her death. This is the primordial soul realm. The difficulty of achieving the primordial soul realm exceeds the difficulty of all the previous stages on the path of cultivation. But this does not make Lin Feng depressed and give up. At this moment, his heart is extremely calm. Have I lost confidence in myself? No, on the contrary, I have accumulated enough. Today is the day to achieve the primordial soul realm. At this moment, Lin Feng's heart is unprecedentedly clear. There are no negative shadows, no selfish thoughts. Taishu Temple, Shu Mountain, the Great Zhou Dynasty, the Great Qin Dynasty, the Heavenly Pool Sect, the Enchantress, the Golden Rock Great Sage and so on, they all disappeared from his mind. Xiao Yan Zhu Yi Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, Yangqing, Tunten Miao Shihao, Kong Nanhua, Jieyu and so on, they all disappeared from his mind. Even the system, the mission, the prize, they all no longer think about it. At this moment, Lin Feng's spirit, energy and spirit reached the peak, completely fusing into one, and only moving forward towards one goal. In his consciousness, only the comprehension of the universe and the Tao of heaven and earth remained, and all of this sublimated into an unwavering will. Forge ahead, press forward with an indomitable will. Amidst the rumbling, in his sea of consciousness, Lin Feng successfully pushed open that door that had been sealed all along. His yuanying turned into a ray of flowing light, charging into the Dharma idol of heaven and earth. As if a person's soul had a body, yuanying and the Dharma idol became one, charging into that open door together. Passing through the door of the void, the 4 faces of Lin Feng's Dharma idol revealed a peaceful and joyful smile at the same time. Then the Dharma idol of heaven and earth collapsed with a loud bang. Chapter 477. Lin Feng's yuanying merged with the Dharma of heaven and earth. As the illusory and real changed, he passed through the door that had finally opened. Under the baptism of countless great Tao nomological laws, Lin Feng's Dharma of heaven and earth that had fused with yuanying suddenly shattered, turning into dazzling talisman seeds. These talisman seeds constantly absorbed the great Tao nomological laws of heaven and earth. Under the nourishment of these nomological powers, they rapidly grew and strengthened. At the same time, in this process, they gradually merged with the world. Lin Feng felt that his consciousness was somewhat blurred, as if his entire person had become a part of the world. But in this blurriness, there was an unprecedented clarity, as if everything was under his control, omniscient and omniscient. His body turned into thousands of talismans, fluttering in the void, and finally gathered together again. Countless talismans constantly merged, and finally became a whole again. It was half black and half white, a Tai Chi diagram with the 2 poles fused. The Tai Chi diagram did not exist in the great heaven primordial world, but it was also the foundation of the Tao that Lin Feng had in mind when he had created his own Tao through the system. Now this was the primordial spirit incarnation that he had obtained after cultivating the heavenly virtue scripture, and achieving the primordial soul stage. I was not born like this, and I was lost in the mortal world for 2 lifetimes. Suddenly, I understood the wonders of heaven and man, one black and one white, and I became a god. In the vast void, the Tai Chi diagram that Lin Feng's primordial spirit incarnation had turned into was vast and boundless, as if it was a universe of its own. Black and white fused, constantly rotating, and evolving into thousands of mysteries. After an unknown period of time, the Tai Chi diagram that Lin Feng's primordial spirit incarnation slowly shrank, passing through the void and returning to the dark heaven time-light cave. Silently, his physical body, which had been sitting cross-legged on the top of the treasure tree, flew up and entered the Tai Chi diagram. As the Tai Chi diagram rotated, Lin Feng's physical body had already disappeared. The black and white blended light and shadow rotated in the air, turning back into Lin Feng's appearance. He was still dressed in a purple robe, but there was an additional Tai Chi diagram on his forehead. This was not Lin Feng's original physical body, but a manifestation of his primordial spirit. He was not a pure martial adept and did not value his original physical body, so he simply refined his physical body into his primordial spirit. Lin Feng's expression was calm and filled with faint joy. He raised his finger and gently tapped his forehead. The Tai Chi diagram had already disappeared. He landed on the top of the small mysterious heaven treasure tree, and his mind merged with the white jade Jing mountain, the mysterious heaven treasure tree, and the cyclic purple chi. He felt an unprecedented harmony. At this moment, the three great treasures seemed to have become a part of his body, and he could use them as he pleased. Lin Feng smiled and clapped his palms together. A shadow flew out from his glabella. It was the shadow of the bell of creation. At that moment, the bell of fortune was still just an intent. Lin Feng had to refine it himself before it could become a real magic treasure. However, for the current Lin Feng, it was no longer something that he could only dream of. Just like when he had condensed the universal Dharma, Lin Feng used the jade Jing mountain stone and the leaves of the mysterious heaven treasure tree as the backbone to refine the bell of creation. After the embryonic form was completed, the cyclic purple chi poured into it. It was as if a wisp of human life had been injected into the clay embryo. No matter how lifelike the originally lifeless clay sculpture or wooden sculpture was, it was still not truly alive. But now the light and shadow of the bell of creation immediately glowed with the luster of life. A young but grand will seemed to be forming, like a real life with its own consciousness and thoughts. This was the magic treasure spirit of the bell of creation. Lin Feng watched this scene silently, feeling the will of life coming from nothing, being born from the primordial chaos, splitting the yin and yang, breaking through the chaos, splitting the heavens and earth, and finally establishing creation. The image of the big bell gradually changed, turning into a huge pitch-black stone door. Its surface was covered with thousands of relief carvings, ancient and desolate, exuding a strong aura of life. Lin Feng waved his hand, and the magic treasure embryo in the yin and yang life and death formation, the casting life sealing stone, flew out and landed in the shadow of the huge stone door. Rise! Lin Feng's magic power was almost endless. It surged and the casting life-sealing stone gradually changed, merging with the shadow of the stone door. In the continuous sound of the bell, the stone door exuded a strong vitality. This was the first transformation of the bell of creation, the life creation door. It represented the birth of infinite life, the door to the creation of infinite things, and contained the great power to open up a place of creation and create a world. Lin Feng raised his hand and grabbed, directly sucking the huge stone door into his hand. It was not that the stone door had become smaller, but Lin Feng's 5 fingers opened and closed, directly grabbing the space. Feeling the power contained in the life creation door, Lin Feng immediately smiled. This is only the first form of the bell of creation, and it already has endless magical uses. The life creation door contained unparalleled life force, far above the Wutong tree heart and the casting life-sealing stone. When used for treatment, it had the miraculous effect of reviving the dead and growing flesh and bones. With this treasure protecting him, Lin Feng was impervious to all evils. Even if he was injured, he could recover in an instant. Moreover, this treasure had the power to nurture all living beings. If it was used in fights, it would also have endless magical uses. It was both a treasure for protection and a treasure for fights. Silently, Lin Feng tried to figure out the concept of power within. Yes, after I create the third chapter of the Heavenly Tao scripture, I can sacrifice and refine this treasure's second form. The four forms combine to form the complete true meaning of creation, destruction, creation, and destruction. Only then would this treasure be refined to the supreme realm of great perfection. Lin Feng only had to think about it for a bit, and he felt fascinated. No wonder this thing in the system, with just a thought, could be worth the sum of all the other things. It's finally done. Lin Feng stepped out of the dark heaven-time light grotto heaven. Silently, he looked at the jade capital mountain in front of him, feeling every blade of grass, every tree, and every living being on the mountain. He felt that it was an unprecedented, yet familiar experience. This feeling was mysterious beyond words. It was indescribably wondrous. At this time, Lin Feng remembered to calculate the time. After thinking for a while, he realized that he had spent 7 years in the dark heaven-time light grotto heaven. In the outside world, only 20 days had passed. 7 years. Lin Feng pondered for a while. He remembered that the system would reward him with a chance to draw a prize every month. Now that he thought about it, he had accumulated a lot. However, according to past experience, every time Lin Feng's cultivation level crossed a major realm, the system would upgrade. Lin Feng's consciousness entered the system. As expected, the system was currently upgrading and could not draw prizes. I'll have to wait. Lin Feng shrugged, withdrew his consciousness from the system, and casually strolled around the mountain. He looked at Zhu Yi and the disciples in the Qiantian palace working hard, looked at Shi Tianhao, Tunten and the others living freely in the desolate Heaven Valley, and looked at Jie Yu not even daring to breathe loudly in front of his wife. Oh! Lin Feng was casually strolling around when a transmission crystal on his body suddenly reacted. Someone was contacting him. Lin Feng raised his brows when he saw the caller. It was the sect master of the Sun Moon Sword sect, the glorious Sun Sword Sovereign. They had not contacted each other since the Desolate Sea Divine Assembly. Who knew that the glorious Sun Sword Sovereign would suddenly send a message today? Back at the Desolate Sea Divine Assembly, Lin Feng had suggested that the sword companions of the Sun Moon Sword sect could participate in the Divine Assembly in pairs. Lin Feng's starting point was admittedly for a portion of the Xian Gate Sky sect's people to also obtain the qualifications to enter the ancient Desolate Sea world, but objectively, he did indeed help the Sun Moon Sword sect. The Solar Glory Sword Venerable was grateful for this, so he got along well with Lin Feng. Lin Feng answered the transmission, and heard the glorious Sun Sword Sovereign's voice. Sect Master Lin, how have you been? The glorious Sun Sword Sovereign is too polite, Lin Feng said with a smile. May I know what's the matter this time that you have to personally transmit a message to me? As Xianmen Tianzong improved, all aspects were gradually on the right track. Zhu Yi was in charge of external communication at the lower levels. This was also one of the few tasks that was not handed over to Dao Jiqiang. As for the higher levels, Kong Nanhua was in charge of communication at the Yuanying level. He was also in charge of communication with the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. Right now, there are already very few people who can directly contact Lin Feng. Only sect masters like the glorious Sun Sword Exalt and the primordial divinity bigwigs can directly contact Lin Feng. If it's a normal matter, they naturally don't need to personally open their mouths. The disciples of the sect can communicate with each other. I heard from others that Sect Master Lin is a Sword Dao Grandmaster. Slowly, the glorious Sun Sword Sovereign said. Recently, a portion of our Sword Dao cultivators will gather together and exchange Sword Dao. If Sect Master Lin is willing, I sincerely invite you to attend the meeting. I can ask you for guidance on Sword Dao. What do you think, Sect Master Lin? Lin Feng's expression did not change. A faint smile appeared on his face. He could hear the words ask for guidance from the glorious Sun Sword Sovereign. There was no hostility in it. It was not a challenge. However, the word consult definitely didn't mean that he was truly asking for guidance. There was a hidden meaning in Solar Luminary's words. The so-called gathering of a portion of sword cultivators definitely wasn't just for a simple exchange of swordsmanship. This won't be a simple gathering, Lin Feng had a guess in his heart. After thinking for a moment he gladly agreed. I wouldn't dare to ask for advice, just like what the Solar Glory Sword Venerable said. We'll just have an exchange. The glorious Sun Sword Sovereign also smiled. In that case, the Great Qin Dynasty's eastern border Lin Province, Qingling Mountain Range's Tianjia Peak, awaits Sect Master Lin's arrival. Among the mountains of West Shu, 6 lone peaks soared into the sky. Each of them was straight and steep, piercing through the clouds like 6 extremely huge unsheathed swords. These 6 mountains were like 6 swords that emanated boundless sword qi, and each of them had different dispositions. Some were gentle, some were forceful and ferocious, some were fierce and ruthless, some were agile and swift, some were simple and dignified, some were feminine and changeable. In the sky above the 6 mountains, there was actually another mountain that floated in the sky. There was no support below it, but it was lifted up by the sword qi from the 6 mountains, hovering in the sky. In the hall of one of the 6 peaks below, a few people sat on the main seats. One of them was an old man with a simple face. It was Guanchong. Slowly he said, "Aren't we going to wait for Sect Master to come out?" "There's no need." A person on the main seat said calmly, "My Shushan sword has not been unsheathed for too long. Many people have already forgotten who is in charge of the 9 Heavens Sword Union. Let's just tell them today." The few people present nodded and stood up. Their swords that could cleave the heavens and split the earth were released. They tore through the void before them and disappeared. Qingling Mountain Range's Tianjia Peak? Let's go. Chapter 478. Before becoming an Essence Soul, Lin Feng's speed in breaking through space and flying was already extremely fast. Now that he has become an Essence Soul, his speed is even more astonishing. The distance of 10,000 miles, but in the blink of an eye, from Kunlun Mountain to Lin Province in the east of the Great Qin Dynasty, the distance of several 100,000 miles was covered in an instant. After hearing the location of the gathering from the Solar Luminary Sword Venerable, Lin Feng was even more certain of his guess. There was a 90% chance that this gathering was targeted at the Mount Shu Sword Sect. In terms of geography, the Lin Province and the Shu Province where the Mount Shu Sword Sect was located were on opposite ends of the Great Qin Dynasty. Although the 9 Heavens Sword Union was mostly united, it was never peaceful internally. Various factions were also trying to stir up trouble. For example, the Sun Moon Sword Sect had always been close to the Great Qin Dynasty. They were also known as the representative of the Great Qin Dynasty in the 9 Heavens Sword Union. As far as Lin Feng knew, the Great Qin Dynasty was not peaceful at the moment. The suppression of the imperial family on the aristocratic families was becoming more and more obvious, and the conflict between the two sides was becoming more and more intense. The conflicts were endless, and the undercurrents were turbulent. Fundamentally speaking, although the aristocratic families were powerful, they could not play tricks with the entire Great Qin Dynasty. However, firstly, the aristocratic families had deep roots, and were one with the Great Qin Dynasty. Their relationship was complicated, and the slightest pull could affect the previous one. Secondly, there were many other major factions who wanted to restrict the Great Qin Dynasty, and secretly supported these aristocratic families, preventing the Great Qin Dynasty from acting freely. But from the latest news, the Great Qin Dynasty was determined to act this time. Other than the 4 aristocratic families, the other small and medium-sized aristocratic families had been dealt a heavy blow. Among the 4 aristocratic families, there was the Hua family, which was out of place, but was closer to the imperial family. As a result, the aristocratic families that had been rampant in the Great Qin Dynasty for thousands of years felt like they were in a precarious situation. These people naturally would not wait for death. They all had their own plans. A storm was about to arrive in the Great Qin Dynasty, and the other factions were watching from the side. The imperial family naturally would not allow themselves to be cleaned up while they were surrounded by wolves. They had to prevent others from taking advantage of the situation. This was the result of the gathering before them. Lin Feng arrived near the Tianjia Peak of the Green Caltrip Mountain Range. After he released his aura of magic power, the Tianjia Peak immediately reacted. A dazzling golden sword light soared into the sky and landed in front of Lin Feng. It turned into a handsome and elegant young man, Sect leader Lin, long time no see. The young man smiled. It was the sect leader of the Sun Moon Sword sect. Although he had the appearance of a young man, he was already a primordial soul expert who had been famous for thousands of years. The disciples of the Sun Moon Sword sect could fuse the Solar Glory and Lunar Splendor dual swords together, and the effect of 1 + 1 was far greater than 2. But even if they were fighting alone, the sword cultivators of the Sun Moon Sword sect were still extremely powerful. The Solar Glory Sword Venerable was a great sword cultivator who looked down on all heroes, and was not the slightest bit weaker than other experts of the same cultivation level. A smile also appeared on Lin Feng's face. It's my honor to have the Luminous Sword Venerable personally welcome me. For this gathering, no one brought along their disciples. The Solar Glory Sword Venerable smiled and said, "It's just a few of us old farts gathering in private." Lin Feng nodded and walked side by side with the Solar Glory Sword Venerable. They landed on the Tianjia Peak of the Green Caltrip mountain range below. The Tianjia Peak was the main peak of the southern foothills of the Green Caltrip mountain range. The mountain was long, and there was an obvious crack from halfway up the mountain to the peak in the center. It was like a wheel mark, but it was incomparably huge. It was as if the wheels of a god's chariot had run over it, hence the name Tianjia Peak. When they reached the peak, they saw a middle-aged man in white standing there silently. There was a faint smile on his face as he watched Lin Feng and the Solar Glory Sword Venerable walk over together. This person's temperament was extremely special. It constantly fluctuated between extreme hardness and extreme softness, and it was unpredictable. It was like soft drifting snow, but also like an extremely sharp longsword, cold and sharp. As he stood there, it was as if he had formed a world of his own. In that world wind and snow flew, and he was covered in silver. Upon closer inspection, the falling snowflakes were like boundless icy sword lights that flickered incessantly. If one looked at it for a long time, they would feel that the icy sword lights had already invaded the Great Thousand Worlds, turning the Great Thousand Worlds into snowflakes. The Solar Glory Sword Venerable introduced, "This is the Flying Snow Sword Venerable." The middle-aged man in white looked at Lin Feng, and his eyes flickered. He smiled and said, "Master of the Celestial Gate, I have long heard of your name." Without the introduction by the Solar Glory Sword Venerable, Lin Feng already knew the background of this person just by sensing his sword intent. The Flying Snow Sword Venerable was not a big shot of the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance, but a rogue cultivator. He reached the primordial spirit realm alone with a single sword. He was one of the few powerful experts outside of the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance who reached the primordial spirit realm through the Sword Tao. Moreover, his cultivation was above that of the Solar Glory Sword Venerable. He was a great sword cultivator at the second tier of the primordial spirit realm, refining his spirit to return to the void. In the past, when he was still at the first tier of the primordial spirit realm, he became a super consecrator of the Great Qin Empire. His sword Tao was outstanding and he was sharp in killing. 1,000 years ago, he was infamous, and he was a sharp sword of the Great Qin Empire. In the recent 1,000 years, he gradually disappeared, and there was little news about him. So it turned out that he had gone into seclusion to break through to the second tier of the primordial spirit realm. Now that he had successfully broken through and refined his spirit to return to the void, he had finally come out of seclusion. This great sword cultivator that belonged to the Great Qin dynasty had appeared here. The meaning of this gathering was self-evident. Just as I expected. Lin Feng looked at the Flying Snow Sword Venerable, and then at the Solar Glory Sword Venerable. He knew that his previous guess was correct. The purpose of this gathering was for the Shushan Sword Sect. I have long heard of the great name of the Flying Snow Sword Venerable. After Lin Feng greeted the Flying Snow Sword Venerable, he walked forward with the Solar Glory Sword Venerable. In the air, there was a slight ripple, and the three of them had already stepped into a miniature alternate dimension. Wind and snow fluttered in the space. This was a miniature sword world space that the host, Flying Snow, had condensed with his spiritual power and sword intent. The moment the Solar Glory Sword Venerable entered, Flying Snow laughed. "The moment you entered, my place became unstable." Lin Feng and the Solar Glory Sword Venerable smiled when they heard that. The Solar Glory Sword Dao of the Solar Glory Sword Dao transformed into a sword intent that was like sunlight, and it clashed with the sword intent of the Flying Snow Sword Dao. This was because the Flying Snow Sword Venerable's cultivation was higher than his. If the two of them were at the same cultivation level, this clash might cause a huge ripple in the sword world. The Solar Glory Sword Venerable laughed. Therefore, 1,000 years ago, I never went to your place as a guest. The Flying Snow Sword Venerable laughed when he heard that. Lin Feng looked at them and thought to himself, the two of them probably knew each other when they were still young. I wonder who was the one who influenced who when they got close to the Great Qin Empire. After entering the sword world, he saw that there were already people waiting inside. One of the elders turned around and saw the Flying Snow Sword Venerable and the Solar Glory Sword Venerable accompanying Lin Feng in. He immediately stroked his beard and laughed. Is this the Xian sect master? The cultivators here did not conceal their sword intent aura. Lin Feng scanned with his divine sense, and felt that this elder's sword intent was like a path to heaven. It overcame all difficulties and cut through brambles and thorns, all the way up to the 9 heavens. His sword intent pierced through the 9 heavens, becoming one with heaven and earth. It was the Sword Dao of the Heavenly Sword Sect. The Heavenly Sword Sect was also a part of the 9 Heavens Sword Alliance. Its strength was above the Sun Moon Sword Sect, Celerita's Sword Sect, and other factions. In the 9 Heavens Sword Alliance, the Heavenly Sword Sect was firmly in second place. The profoundness of the Sword Dao, the number of experts, and the massive faction was second only to the Shushan Sword Sect. In the Heavenly Sword Sect, there were 5 great sword cultivators who had reached the primordial soul realm, and the elder in front of him was at the same realm as Venerable Flying Snow. They had both reached the second tier of the primordial soul realm. Sword Venerable Solar Glory introduced from the side. This is the Heavenly Sword Sect's Elder Immortal Sword. The elder stroked his beard and laughed. The sect master of the Shushan sect is currently in seclusion. He really can't split himself, so I had to make a trip here. I hope that fellow Taoists don't mind. Sword Venerable Flying Snow shook his head and laughed. Elder Immortal Sword coming out of the Heavenly Sword Mountain is even rarer than Sword Venerable Heavenly Sword. We will only welcome you with open arms. Hearing how Sword Venerable Solar Glory and Sword Venerable Flying Snow addressed the elder, Lin Feng was enlightened. He knew who this person was. Elder Immortal Sword, the Heavenly Sword Sect's Supreme Elder. He had cultivated for more than 10,000 years, and was extremely senior. The current sect master of the Heavenly Sword Sect was 2 generations younger than him. After Lin Feng greeted Elder Immortal Sword, Sword Venerable Solar Glory introduced him to the other great sword cultivators in the sword world. Oh, interesting. After one round, Lin Feng's expression did not change, but he felt that it was interesting. The 9 Heavens Sword Alliance, including the Shushan Sword Sect, was made up of a total of 9 sword sections. And in this gathering, there were as many as 6 members of the 9 Heavens Sword Alliance. Other than the Heavenly Sword Sect and the Sun Moon Sword Sect, there was also the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, the Constellation Sword Sect, the Vast Sea Sword Sect, and the Celerita's Sword Sect. These 6 sects, together with the Shushan Sword Sect, the Wilderness Sword Sect, and the Blaze Sword Sect, formed the complete 9 Heavens Sword Alliance. Among them, the Sun Moon Sword Sect had always been on good terms with the Great Qin dynasty, and the Heavenly Sword Sect was the second mountain in the 9 Heavens Sword Alliance other than the Shushan Sword Sect. The Thunderbolt Sword Sect had always been the ally of the Heavenly Sword Sect. This time, there was also a primordial soul realm cultivator participating in the gathering. What was worth noting was that this person was not the sect master, Sword Venerable Thunderbolt, but the newly advanced primordial soul realm expert of the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, Ben Lazy. This surprised the other great sword cultivators. The Thunderbolt Sword Sect was strong to begin with, and the Thunderbolt Sword Venerable was at the second tier of the primordial soul realm. At this moment, there was actually another primordial soul expert in the sect, causing the Thunderbolt Sword Sect's strength to rise a step further. Ben Lazy was originally one of the top Yuanying sword cultivators in the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, and was thought to be one of the most promising candidates to reach the primordial soul realm. For such a joyous event where someone in the sect reached the primordial soul realm, they would usually invite their fellow Taoists to attend and celebrate. Who knew that the Thunderbolt Sword sect would actually hide the news this time? If not for Ben Lazy attending this gathering, no one would have known that he had actually successfully reached the primordial soul realm. Although the Thunderbolt Sword Venerable had not arrived, Ben Lazy's arrival this time had already expressed the Thunderbolt Sword sect's attitude. But what made Lin Feng even more interested was that his old acquaintance, the Flowing Light Sword Venerable, was also here. All along, in the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance, the Flowing Light Sword sect and the Blaze Sword sect were the Shushan Sword sect's staunchest supporters and followers. Chapter 479. Swordsman Flowing Light was still the same. His face was like jade, his black hair was like a waterfall, and he looked to be in his 40s. 2 strands of snow-white hair hung down from the sides of his temples, and his eyes were full of majesty. He was standing there quietly at this moment. Not only did he attract the attention of Lin Feng, the other great sword cultivators also felt slightly surprised in their hearts. If the Wilderness Sea Council accepted the invitation, then it was normal. But the appearance of the Celeritas swordsman Flowing Light here was obviously a surprise, and it was hard to avoid many speculations. Swordsman Flowing Light himself was calm, and in the process of talking with others, he was calm as usual. Compared to Swordsman Flowing Light, although the arrival of Star Swordsman was also noticed, it was not so eye-catching. Within the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance, Star Swordsman sect and Wilderness Sword sect were relatively neutral, and also relatively independent. They were not too close to Shu Mountain, but they were not too close to other big powers outside of the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance. However, the Constellation Sword sect in the past wasn't within the borders of the Grand Qin dynasty, and it had once undergone a great migration before settling down in the territory of the Grand Qin dynasty. In a certain sense, it owed the Grand Qin dynasty a great favor. From this point of view, it was not too surprising that the Star Swordsman sect would lean towards the Great Qin dynasty at a critical moment. Compared to the arrival of Star Swordsman sect, the Songhai Sword sect also came, which attracted Lin Feng's attention, and he could decipher many things from it. Within the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance, the Songhai Sword sect was a bit different, because the location of the Songhai Sword sect was far above the South Sea. Geographically speaking, it was the only large sword sect that was not in the Great Qin dynasty. On the contrary, the Songhai Sword sect was actually within the sphere of influence of the Great Zhou dynasty. So just like how the Sun Moon Sword sect was seen as the representative of the Great Qin dynasty's royal family, the Songhai Sword sect had always been seen as a grain of sand that the Great Zhou dynasty had mixed into the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance. After the Great Zhou dynasty eliminated the power of the aristocratic families and sects, and highly centralized power, the Songhai Sword sect was one of the few large sects that still had a foothold in the Great Zhou dynasty. Due to all these reasons, the Songhai Sword sect had a special position in the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance. It was slightly estranged from the other sword sects, including Mount Shu. Usually, during the alliance meeting, the Songhai Sword sect kept a low profile and did not have much of a presence. However, this did not mean that the Songhai Sword sect was weak. There were many experts in the Songhai Sword sect, and it had always been regarded as the third greatest sword sect in the world, second only to Shu Mountain and Tongtian. The person from the Songhai Sword sect who came this time was a Yuanian cultivator. He was the only one who had not reached the primordial soul realm among the people present. He very humbly expressed that he was here to listen to the decision made by the group of big shots. Any decision would represent the Songhai Sword sect, and he was willing to follow them. Lin Feng looked at this person and thought to himself, is this the attitude of the Great Zhou dynasty? Perhaps Liang Pan, Zhu Honggu, and the others will not sit by and watch the Qin dynasty clean up its own internal problems to increase its strength, but they have also made their stand against the Mount Shu sword sect. Perhaps they will not interfere personally, but the Songhai sword sect will participate. As far as Lin Feng knew, the relationship between the Great Zhou dynasty and the Mount Shu sword sect was not harmonious. It could only be said that it was passable on the surface. The discord between the two started from the battle of vanquishing Buddhism decades ago. Unlike the Taishu temple, which only had the support of the Grand Supreme Formation breaking drum. The Mount Shu sword sect had personally taken action, causing the destruction of the Great Tempest Monastery, which was also one of the 3 sacred grounds. In the end, Mount Shu had suffered great losses as well. The Lunar Sword Venerable had died on the spot, and to this day, no one from the Lunar Sword lineage could advance to the 2nd tier of the Primordial Soul Realm to take over. However, in the end the gains did not make up for the losses. The Great Zhou dynasty rose up by stepping on the ruins of the Great Tempest Monastery, and the fruits of victory were almost all in the hands of the Great Zhou dynasty. This made the Mount Shu sword sect extremely dissatisfied. As Lin Feng thought to himself, he chatted with the few great sword cultivators. None of them mentioned anything against Mount Shu. They were simply exchanging their insights on sword Dao and Dao techniques. It was as if it was really as Solar Luminary Sword Venerable had said, a gathering of ordinary sword cultivators to exchange pointers on their sword Dao cultivation. To them, as long as they were here, they had already made their stance clear. There was no need to say anything else. Lin Feng did not speak much as he was in the middle. He only displayed a little of the sword intent that he had comprehended from that ferocious sword. However, just this brief display was enough to attract the attention of the great sword cultivators. However, after that, Lin Feng did not display it anymore, leaving the great sword cultivators at the Primordial Soul Realm unable to hold back their curiosity. Lin Feng's sword intent seemed to have revealed a brand new world to them, a brand new path. Sect leader Lin, may I have a word with you? Sword Venerable Flying Snow was also very tempted by the sword intent that Lin Feng displayed. However, he quickly suppressed his restless sword heart and said solemnly, His Majesty Emperor Qin has something that requires sect leader Lin's help. Lin Feng took a glance at Sword Venerable Flying Snow and nodded slightly. The sword world that everyone was currently in was formed from Venerable Swordsman Flying Snow's magic power and sword intent. With a thought, Venerable Swordsman Flying Snow had already broken through the void with Lin Feng and arrived at another alternate dimension. When the other big shots saw this, their expressions remained unchanged. They were just guessing why Emperor Qin Stonefeather was looking for Lin Feng. Ben Lazy and Old Sword Immortal looked at each other. The same thought flashed in their eyes. I'm afraid it has something to do with the sword Dao of the Master of Xianmen. Flying Snow confirmed the authenticity and uniqueness of his sword Dao before making the invitation. If the news of the Master of Xianmen's sword Dao being profound wasn't true, this might not have happened. Lin Feng had also thought of this point. Therefore, when he arrived in the void with Sword Venerable Flying Snow, he silently looked at Sword Venerable Flying Snow. Using his finger as a sword, Sword Venerable Flying Snow drew a circle of light in the air. Within the circle of light, a figure appeared. It was a middle-aged man wearing a crown and dragon robe. He was overflowing with the aura of an emperor. He was Emperor Qin Stonefeather. Stonefeather looked at Lin Feng and nodded. Sect Master Lin, I have a presumptuous request this time. I hope that you can help me. Lin Feng's expression was calm. He said indifferently, Dao friend, please speak. The light and shadow in front of him changed. Suddenly, a black fog spread out. Within the black fog, there was a vague 5-colored radiance shooting out. Within the 5-colored radiance, a true dragon could be seen roaming. Its dragon might was astonishing. Within the 5-colored radiance of white, green, black, scarlet, and yellow, there seemed to be a long light shadow that could not be seen clearly. Lin Feng's brows twitched slightly. Even though he could not see the true appearance of the light shadow, Lin Feng could sense that this object was extremely huge. It was not accurate to say that it was huge. Its total volume was indeed huge, but in terms of appearance, it was mainly long. It was extremely long, so long that it was hard to imagine. Even with Lin Feng's perception after attaining the Essence Soul Realm, it was still a little hard to describe. This was because he could vaguely sense that this object's length was probably hundreds of thousands of kilometers, or even millions of kilometers. Such a length could not be described with the general meaning of length. This was because it was very difficult to use something that was similar to the length as an analogy. Looks like the news is not false. This should be the Great Qin Dynasty's trump card, their national treasure. Lin Feng understood. He had previously received news that in order to deal with the increasingly turbulent situation, the Great Qin dynasty was preparing to refine their own national treasure. This treasure had actually existed a long time ago. Like the Great Zhou dynasty's grand imperial palace, it was a primordial inheritance. However, at that time, it had not been completely refined. It was an incomplete product. Afterward, it landed in the hands of the Great Qin dynasty, and the imperial family had always hoped to refine it completely. However, this treasure could be said to have been plagued with mishaps, and they had never been able to completely refine it. In the most recent war between the human race and the demon race, it had suffered severe damage. But looking at it now, in these thousands of years, the imperial family of the Great Qin dynasty had always been preparing in secret. As they repaired the damage, they also hoped to completely refine this treasure. The reason why the imperial family of the Great Qin dynasty had been low profile and weak in recent years was very likely because they had invested too many resources into this treasure. It was still an incomplete product, but through the void, Lin Feng could faintly feel the powerful concept of power of this treasure. It was filled with a supreme aura that was insurmountable, indestructible, and could suppress all the worlds in the world. It had an inextinguishable fate. No wonder Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu were so anxious, spending so much effort to seize Yude Minghua. If the Grand Imperial Palace doesn't continue to improve, when this treasure is completely refined, they probably won't be a match for it. Silently, Lin Feng looked at the shadow in the black fog and didn't say a word. Sword Venerable Flying Snow stood beside him and looked at the shadow with admiration in his eyes. Suddenly, a hint of darkness flashed past his eyes. "Excuse me for a moment," Sword Venerable Flying Snow said. The voice of Qin Emperor Stonefeather came from the other side of the shadow. "Flying Snow, go handle it yourself." Sword Venerable Flying Snow nodded at Lin Feng and stepped into the void to leave this space. Stonefeather's voice came over. "I have troubled Sect Master Lin to come over this time, because I want to ask Sect Master Lin to make a move." Silently Lin Feng said, "Make a move." "That's right," Stonefeather said. "Truth be told, what is placed before Sect Master Lin now is the supreme magic treasure of my Great Qin that can suppress the karmic luck of a nation. In the past, my Great Qin relied on this treasure to obtain the nation. It's a pity that the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. This treasure has never been truly refined until today. Finally, there's some improvement." Lin Feng's tone was indifferent. "The heavenly Tao is balanced. After thousands of trials and tribulations, once it appears in the world, it will surpass countless mortals. I should congratulate fellow Taoist. Thank you for your blessings, Sect Master Lin." Stonefeather continued. "I heard Imperial Uncle Zhongyu and Xing Do mention that Sect Master Lin has the supreme sword Tao and has the intent to destroy the world. Therefore, this time, I specially ask Sect Master Lin to make a move and help my Great Qin to make this treasure appear in the world." At this moment, Lin Feng already completely understood Stonefeather's thoughts. This person wanted to borrow the sword intent of Lin Feng's peerless ominous sword to stimulate this supreme treasure of the Great Qin dynasty and make it completely mature. Although this treasure was powerful, Lin Feng could sense that this was actually a treasure that was stronger in defense than offense. Not only was its defense powerful, but it also had the powerful intent of protecting everything and protecting all things in the world. My body is indestructible, and I should protect all things for eternity. Creation will not suffer from tribulations. Meanwhile, that ominous sword on Jade Capital Mountain just happened to be the opposite of it. It had the great destruction sword intent that could destroy everything in the world and slay creation. When it was attacked by the ominous sword, this treasure would stimulate all of its potential, and thus reach its peak state. Of course, if it could not withstand it, then it would be completely destroyed by the ominous sword. However, if Lin Feng could freely control this sword, then the result would definitely be within a controllable range. Stonefeather said slowly, "Sect Master Lin, please be generous in your assistance. My Great Qin will definitely repay you generously." Chapter 480. As the ruler of a country, if Stonefeather said that there would be a generous reward, then it would naturally not be too shabby. However, even if the Qin dynasty did not give a reward, Lin Feng would still agree after putting on a show. It was very simple. The Qin dynasty wanted to use the ominous sword to form a blood bond with a magical treasure. And was that not the perfect whetstone for the ominous sword? The two sides were completely opposite in power. Lin Feng believed that this supreme magical treasure of the Qin dynasty was probably the best thing in the entire heaven primordial world for tempering the ominous sword besides the Shushan immortal sword Qi. Before, even though he had heard that the great Qin dynasty had such a treasure, but he had never actually seen it before, and did not know its details. Now that he has clearly understood the concept of power contained within it, there is no way that Lin Feng would let go of such a perfect whetstone. As for the fact that the Qin dynasty's strength would soar after successfully forming a blood bond with such a treasure, and that it might become a potential enemy, Lin Feng believed that when the heaven-punishing sword was completely unsheathed and could be effectively controlled, his strength would grow even more terrifyingly. However, it was definitely not possible now. Lin Feng could feel that this magical treasure was not yet complete. The unbreakable and unbreakable protector concept of all to eternity was not complete. If not for this, it would not have been damaged during the war between the two worlds. Stonefeather also understood this. Today he had only communicated with Lin Feng, and the two sides had come to an agreement. When I passed by Western Tomb City, you could have suggested this. Why wait until today? Lin Feng asked nonchalantly. Stonefeather said silently, back then some things were not ready, so I did not mention it easily. But today, there's no harm in mentioning it. As he said this, a powerful wave of power passed through the void. Lin Feng's pupils constricted slightly. He saw a ball of golden light land before him. The golden light itself contained powerful spiritual power, and its purpose was to seal the thing within. Within the light was an independent lesser world. The starry sky was resplendent, and in the center of the galaxy, there was a true dragon. It was a primordial sky dragon with an extremely pure bloodline. Its body was close to 10,000 zhang long, and it was extremely powerful and huge. The majestic power of blood and qi emanating from it shook the universe. This was a primordial sky dragon that had attained the indestructible demon soul realm. Lin Feng scanned it, and discovered that the primordial sky dragon was already dead. The pocket world of light stored its corpse. However, even though he was already dead, his corpse still emanated boundless power, and there were even great auspicious clouds floating around his body, exuding a heavy and dignified aura. Slowly, Qin Emperor Stonefeather said, "This is my great Qin's gift to sect leader Lin. This is just a token of appreciation. We will reward you when the time comes." How extravagant! Lin Feng thought to himself. The corpse of a primordial sky dragon is filled with treasures after its death. This entire sky dragon slough is indeed quite a hefty reward. A sky dragon corpse was nothing. A pure-blooded primordial sky dragon corpse was nothing either. However, a pure-blooded primordial sky dragon's corpse that had attained the indestructible demon soul realm, and was extremely complete, with not a single dragon scale missing, was extremely valuable. Although the dark solitary skeleton that Lin Feng obtained in the Cloud Forest world was complete, it was only a skeleton. This sky dragon corpse before him had dragon scales, dragon bones, dragon blood, dragon flesh, dragon tendons, etc. All of it was complete. As the number one dynasty of the human race in the divine land in the past, the Great Qin dynasty's foundation was on full display at this moment. Just the deposit given to Lin Feng was an entire primordial sky dragon corpse that had attained the indestructible demon soul realm. Then the resources they invested into that super dharma treasure was imaginable. Lin Feng did not stand on ceremony either. With a flick of his sleeves, he directly swept up the golden ball of light and put it away. On the other side of the space, although Qin Emperor Stonefeather's expression did not change, his heart stirred slightly. He felt that his dharmic powers were instantly dispelled into nothingness by Lin Feng. He did not have any enmity. His dharmic powers turned into golden light, and was only used to temporarily seal the sky dragon corpse. It did not have much power. However, for Lin Feng to dispel it so effortlessly, it still made him have a better understanding of Lin Feng's strength. After Lin Feng put away the sky dragon corpse, he said indifferently, "This seat agrees to this matter. It's just that looking at this Dharma treasure of yours, it's still some distance from the final step." Stonefeather answered frankly, "That's right. It still needs some time, but it's already right in front of us. At that time, I'll have to ask Sect Master Lin to make a move." Lin Feng stared at the illusion of light and shadow in front of him. His gaze passed through the layers of black mist and stopped on the image of the Dharma treasure that flashed with 5-colored light. "Oh, I can indeed faintly sense the profoundness of the 9 glorious stars movement. When this Dharma treasure is fully activated, it can probably draw in the endless star power of the 9 glorious stars into its body as its driving force. This should be the result of Stonefeather refining a portion of the 9 glorious sky crumbling formation diagram into this Dharma treasure." As Lin Feng was analyzing this super Dharma treasure of the Great Qin dynasty, Venerable Swordsman Flying Snow returned to the sword world at the peak of the Green Caltrip mountain range. The moment he arrived, he immediately realized that the situation was extremely tense. With Old Sword Immortal as the leader, a group of great sword cultivators stood together silently, facing off against another group of people in front of them. The person leading the other party was tall and burly, and he had an imposing aura. Just by standing there, he was like a huge sword that wanted to split the heaven and earth, extremely domineering and fierce. Venerable Swordsman Flying Snow took a deep breath. Venerable Little Shang. This person was the sword master of the Shaoshang sword lineage, the fiercest of the 6 lineages of Shushan sword sect, Venerable Little Shang. Beside him, there were 3 other great sword cultivators whose auras were in no way inferior to his. They stood there calmly. One of them had an elegant bearing and wore a smile on his face, but no one dared to belittle him. Clearly, he was standing there, but everyone present, including Venerable Swordsman Flying Snow, could not determine his true position. It was as if he was standing in many layers of time and space, representing countless possibilities and drifting about. Venerable Swordsman Flying Snow was expressionless. "Even Venerable Little Swordsman is here?" Venerable Little Swordsman was the Sword Master Grandmaster of the 6 lineages of Shushan sword lineage. Venerable Little Swordsman was the most agile and nimble of the 6 lineages of Shushan sword lineage, and was even hailed as the fastest sword Dao in the Divine Land. Its evaluation was even above the Celeritas sword sect's instant sword escape, and the Heavenly sword sect's heavenly sword escape. Venerable Little Swordsman was one of the few mystical abilities in the Divine Land that could allow cultivators below the Yuanying stage to traverse through space and assassinate. Most people thought that Shushan Little Swordsman was traversing through space and assassinating, while Celerita's sword sect's instant sword escape was infused with the profound concept of time. But that was for sword cultivators who had yet to form their primordial spirit. On Venerable Little Swordsman, who was already at the 2nd level of the primordial spirit realm, it was infused with the profound concepts of time and space, pushing Venerable Little Swordsman to the extreme. Beside the junior sword Venerable was an old man with a simple and solemn face. His eyes were dull, and he seemed like a stubborn rock. It seemed as if nothing could arouse his interest, but at the same time, nothing could make him waver. It was Venerable Guanchong, who Lin Feng had met once before. After experiencing the calamity of the Cloudy Forest realm, Venerable Guanchong had also recuperated in Shushan for a long time. Until now, his vitality had not completely recovered, but this time he still rushed over. On the other side of Venerable Guanchong was a middle-aged man dressed in hemp clothes, barefooted. The essence, spirit, and spirit of the Shushan sword cultivators were completely exposed, not concealed at all. The higher one's cultivation, the more it was so. The only exception was this hemp-clothed man. He did not emit any sword intent or spiritual power aura at all. He stood there normally, as if he was a mortal in the secular world. But the person Venerable Flying Snow and the others feared the most was this person. The sword master of Shushan's Li Meng sword lineage. Li Meng sword lineage. Among Shushan's 6 lineages sword lineage, Li Meng sword lineage was the most vicious and vicious. It had the most murderous and vicious aura. Its disciples were all numb to killing, and Venerable Fierce sword lineage himself was the great sword cultivator, Who killed the most in the entire Shushan? Ancient Killing God Sect, Southern Border Hua Clan, Reincarnation Sect, and Azura Path did not dare to boast about killing in front of Li Meng's sword lineage. Venerable Fierce Sword Lineage looked at Venerable Flying Snow calmly, and said expressionlessly, "Flying Snow, long time no see. You have finally refined your spirit to return to the void." Venerable Flying Snow was similarly expressionless. He only felt a tearing pain in the depths of his primordial spirit. That pain was not real, but it was deeply imprinted in the memories of Venerable Flying Snow's consciousness. 2,000 years ago, Venerable Flying Snow, who was still at the first tier of the primordial spirit realm, had once fought with Venerable Fierce Sword Lineage. In the end, he was defeated by the other party's sword, and was even nearly killed on the spot. Even though Old Sword Immortal and the others looked calm, their gazes had turned solemn. Shushan's 6 pulse swords, the 6 great sword masters, were all at the second tier of the primordial spirit realm. Great sword cultivators at the void return realm. Other than Venerable Lunar Sword, who had died in battle at the Great Thunderclap Monastery, and Venerable Xiaoyang, who had stayed in Shushan after Sect Master Xi and Longxing went into seclusion, the other 4 were all present. Other than these 4 great sword cultivators at the second tier of the primordial spirit realm, Shushan also had a few experts at the first tier of the primordial spirit realm present. Even though this gathering, which was led by Venerable Flying Snow and Venerable Brilliant Sword Sage, did not state it explicitly, it was obvious that it was targeted at Shushan. But when Venerable Xiaoshang and the others arrived, the others immediately felt the strength and overbearing dominance of Shushan. This was a colossus that required the other 8 members of the Nine Heavens Sword Union to join forces in order to barely resist. It was a powerful sect that even the entire Great Qin dynasty would have to use all their strength to resist. It was the #1 Sword Dao sect in the world, alongside the Taishu Temple and the Great Thunderclap Monastery, as one of the 3 sacred grounds of the human cultivation world. The tall and burly Venerable Xiaoshang laughed boldly and said, "We have come uninvited, so please forgive us. It's just that, for fellow sword cultivators to gather here today, I wonder if there's something big happening?" Venerable Brilliant Sword Sage said calmly, "What big thing can there be? It's just a group of fellow sword cultivators having an exchange of sword Dao and learning from each other." Venerable Xiaoshang smiled slightly and said, "Oh? Then we can be considered to be coincidentally here, so let's join in the fun. I believe fellow Taoists won't mind." Before Venerable Flying Snow and Venerable Brilliant Sword Sage said anything, Venerable Xiaoshang laughed loudly. "What's there to mind? Thousands of swords in the world come out of Shushan, and this is a Sword Dao alliance. How can it be proper without Shushan?" The moment he said that, the expressions of Old Sword Immortal, Venerable Flying Snow, Ben Lazy, Venerable Star Constellation, and the others changed. Who knew that Venerable Xiaoshang's character was just as overbearing as his Xiaoshang sword. He did not leave any leeway for others and said, "We sword cultivators are decisive in killing, so we should make friends with our swords. An exchange of the way of the sword is not something that can be achieved through words alone. Let's have a real spar." He glanced sideways at Venerable Flying Snow and the others and laughed. "My Shushan will be the arena master. Who wants to fight with us?" As he said that, an overbearing sword chi rushed into the sky and directly slashed through the sword world that Venerable Flying Snow had set up. Chapter 481. As Sword Venerable Little Shang laughed out loud. A domineering and ferocious sword chi soared into the sky. It actually caused a crack to appear in the small world formed by Sword Venerable Flying Snow's sword intent and magic power. Amidst the flying snow, a crack suddenly appeared in the sky. It was as if a wound had appeared in this small world. It was mournful and dazzling. Venerable Flying Snow's expression turned ashen. The wind and snow within the sword world continued to howl, instantly turning berserk. However, they did not attack Venerable Little Shang. Even if the wind and snow blew past revered swordsman of Little Shang, it had no intention of attacking him. This was because Sword Venerable Li Meng, who looked like an ordinary person, had his sword intent firmly locked onto Sword Venerable Flying Snow, causing Sword Venerable Li Meng to not dare to be distracted at all. Everyone knew that Sword Venerable Li Meng didn't use his weapon, but once he did, he would definitely kill. Li Xiong of Mount Shu only needed one sword to kill. Usually, when he had thousands of sword qis in his body, he had to endure the endless pain of being cut by thousands of blades. Before hurting the enemy, he would hurt himself first. However, in the instant that he drew his sword, all of his sword will and dermic powers burst forth. The swift and fierce attack that targeted a single point of attack could be said to be the best among the 6 lineages of Shushan. Honorable Swordsman Li said calmly. The Swordsman Li of Shushan never leaves anyone alive. Flying Snow, in the past, when you and I were both at the first level of the primordial spirit realm, you managed to survive a single strike from me. I have always been looking for an opportunity to fight with you again. At this point, Sword Supremacy Li Meng suddenly laughed. But after I refined my spirit to revert to the void, killing you, who was only at the first tier of the primordial soul realm, was really boring. Over the past 1,000 years, I've been waiting for you to attain the second tier of the primordial soul realm. Let us see the outcome of our unfinished battle 2,000 years ago today. Hearing that, Sword Venerable Flying Snow turned silent. Slowly, he closed his eyes. The sword world formed from his magic power, and sword intent suddenly melted away. Everyone found themselves in the void. Venerable Sword Flying Snow reopened his eyes and looked at Venerable Sword Li Meng calmly. Please. As he said this, a faintly discernible sword will spread out from his body, and collided with the ominous swordsman's aura, which was about to explode. On the Shushan side, the junior sword lord, who had the mildest temperament, cast his gaze towards the heavenly sword sect's Elder Sword Immortal. He smiled faintly and said, Elder Sword Immortal, you should be enjoying your fortune on the heavenly mountain. Why did you come all the way here? Although his tone was gentle, the fact that he had spoken made Sun Luminary Sword Venerable and the others shudder. They knew that this Sword Master Grandmaster of Lesser Rule Swords was about to make a move as well. Old Sword Immortal stroked his beard and smiled. I'm just a bag of old bones, so I have to move them. Otherwise they will really rust. Junior Sword Venerate shook his head and laughed. Since that's the case, since it's rare for you to come out of the sky-piercing mountain, I naturally have to seize the opportunity to spar with you. Otherwise, I don't know when the next time will be. Old Sword Immortal, who had white hair and a ruddy complexion, did not have the slightest hesitation. He said straightforwardly, Of course. Your esteemed Sex Shaozi Sword Artifact, my Heavenly Path Sword Sex Great Dao Heavenly Path Sword, plus the Celeritas Sword Sex Instant Sword Escape are publicly acknowledged as the 3 fastest Sword Dao abilities in the vast divine continent. Today, this old man will compete with Shaozi Sword Venerable to see who is faster. Junior Sword Venerate glanced at Celeritas Sword Venerate at the side, smiling faintly. This matter has long been publicly agreed upon. Let's verify it today. At the side, Junior Sword Venerate was also staring at Celeritas Sword Venerate, continuously shaking his head. Old friend, why are you doing this? The two of them had been friends for many years. Back then when Junior Sword Venerate ascended the cloud-traversing peak, he even left behind a sword mark that contained the sword intent of his junior rule swords. By observing this sword mark, others could more or less understand some of the mysteries of the junior rule swords. The Celeritas Sword Sect also participating in this alliance meeting against Shushan was out of the expectations of many people. Celeritas Sword Venerate stood with his hands behind his back, his expression calm. Why ask when you already know the answer? The smile on Junior Sword Venerate's face gradually disappeared. He was also silent. Only after a long while did he lightly sigh. Ever since you took over the Celeritas Sword Sect, you have been increasingly alienated from my Shushan. I was also forced to do so. Silently Sword Venerate Flowing Light said. What you said is right, but at that time I had no enmity toward Shushan. I only hoped that the Celeritas Sword Sect could walk its own path, and not always be under the shadow of Shushan, following them around like a servant. The Blaze Sword Sect is happy to walk this path, I am not. Celeritas Sword Venerate Flowing Light's tone was calm from beginning to end. But I never thought that Shushan would be so overbearing, to actually be unable to even tolerate this little request of my Celeritas Sword Sect? When Cellerita's sword venerates sunlight and the others heard this, their faces all revealed a thoughtful expression, thinking in their hearts. Junior sword venerate flowing light left a sword mark for the Cellerita's sword sect. On the surface it seems to be friendship, but thinking deeper, I'm afraid it doesn't have any good intentions. Junior sword venerate flowing light snorted. Aren't you still going to rely on the Qin dynasty right now? Open your eyes and see clearly. No matter if it's the Qin dynasty or the Great Zhou dynasty, the thorns in their eyes are not only the aristocratic powers, but also the major sections. Cellerita's sword venerate flowing light nodded his head, glancing at Cellerita's flying snow who was facing off with someone and Cellerita's sword venerate sunlight who was beside him. He said with emotion, "What you said is right, so no matter what, we have to thank the existence of Shushan. Even if they are grateful, they will not continue to walk together with Shushan, gradually becoming a vassal of Shushan. And it is precisely because of the pressure brought by Shushan that even if the sky falls there is this big guy to hold it up. The Qin dynasty instead does not dare to make things difficult for the Cellerita's sword sect, and even more enthusiastically tries to win them over and give preferential treatment. This already has nothing to do with personal friendship. It is completely a choice made by the person at the helm of a large sect that is most in line with the interests of his own sect. At the very beginning Cellerita's sword venerate flowing light did not want his sect to become a vassal of Shushan. His original plan was perhaps only to adjust the Cellerita's sword sect's general policy, turning it into a middle ground like the Constellation Sword Sect and the Wilderness Sword Sect. But the Shushan Sword Sect's response, using Cellerita's sword venerate Little Shang to scheme against Cellerita's sword venerate flowing light, enraged this great sword cultivator, making him change his mind and choose to lean towards the Qin dynasty. Cellerita's sword sect definitely does not wish for Shushan to be destroyed. If that happens, it will be hard to avoid the result of the dogs being cooked when the hares are dead. But he is clearly very willing for Shushan to be taught a lesson, making Shushan restrain its overbearing style. Cellerita's sword venerate Little Shang is expressionless. So, at the lakeside of the North Wind Sea, you deliberately lost the sword scar inscription I left for you to the master of Xian Gate. Shushan's sword venerate Little Shang is truly extraordinary. Even knowing that it will block my path of advancement, it still deeply attracts me. Cellerita's sword venerate flowing light sighed. But it is also because I gave up your sword scar inscription that I finally walked back on the right track. Just as he was speaking, Cellerita's sword venerate flowing light's body suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance, transforming into a ray of light, flickering in the air, its whereabouts uncertain. This was the primordial spirit avatar that Cellerita's sword venerate Little Shang had cultivated, the instantaneous flowing light sword Dao. At this moment, he manifested his primordial spirit avatar not to fight Cellerita's sword venerate Little Shang, but to break through the bottleneck and advance to the second tier of the primordial spirit realm, the realm of refining the spirit to return to the void. In front of all the great sword cultivators, he had attained the second tier of the primordial spirit realm. Cellerita's sword venerate Little Shang's expression was solemn, but he did not stop Cellerita's sword venerate flowing light's actions. The ray of light formed by Cellerita's sword venerate flowing light's primordial spirit was originally flickering, but at this moment, it suddenly became clear. It streaked across the void, and did not dissipate for a long time, gradually forming the outline of a figure. It was in the shape of a longsword. It did not have a physical body, only a silhouette formed by the light. However, it exuded an elusive and powerful intent of power. It was like a fleeting stream of light. That instant was so short that it flashed by in a hurry, difficult to grasp or capture. This longsword was like an independent world, floating outside the void of the heaven primordial world. Within the longsword, there were countless lights and shadows changing. In the time it took to snap a finger, it changed 60 times. Each light and shadow was a different image. When Cellerita's sword venerate saw this scene, he silently said, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist." Old Sword Immortal, Ben Lazy, Astral Constellation Sword Venerate, and the others also said in unison, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist." Even Sword Venerate Little Shang sighed. "Old friend, congratulations." The group of primordial spirit experts congratulated him in unison. They congratulated Celerita's sword venerate flowing light for successfully refining his spirit to return to the void, condensing his own void-returning Dharma body, and advancing to the second tier of the primordial spirit realm. Even Sword Venerate Little Shang gave up on Old Sword Immortal. He looked over and said with a smile, "If I remember correctly, this is the fifth cultivator in the entire Celerita's sword sex history to refine his spirit to return to the void, right? In my lifetime, I have yet to spar with a second-tier primordial spirit realm cultivator from the Celerita's sword sect. Today, let me witness a void-returning realm cultivator's instantaneous sword escape." Sword Venerate Little Shang shook his head. "He is mine." As he said this, a majestic and domineering sword intent soared into the sky, shaking the entire void. Its target was Sword Venerate Flowing Light. Sword Venerate Flowing Light dispersed his void-returning Dharma body and regained his human form. The sharp and ethereal sword intent similarly aimed at Sword Venerate Little Shang. Sword Venerate Little Shang chuckled lightly, not getting angry. He turned to look at the heavenly sword sex Old Sword Immortal and said with a smile, "I was just curious. Old Sword Immortal, please don't blame me." Old Sword Immortal said indifferently, "How could that be? Even this old man has sparred with a void-returning realm cultivator from the Celerita's sword sect. It has already been several thousand years. Seeing it today, I am also a little moved." Sword Venerate Little Shang smiled faintly and did not say anything else. His figure flashed and his sword intent surged, instantly seeming to transform into several tins of himself. This was not the shadow clone technique, but rather Sword Venerate Little Shang pushing his sword Dao cultivation to the extreme. His primordial spirit escaped into many layers of space and time. It was the same logic as Lin Feng using Jade Capital Mountain to manifest many possibilities of time in the cloudy forest world. Seeing this, Old Sword Immortal also displayed his own Great Dao Heavenly Sword technique. His body transformed into endless sword light, his aura surging like a bull. He instantly traversed through endless space and clashed with Sword Venerate Little Shang. At the same time, Sword Venerate Little Shang and Sword Venerate Flowing Light, Sword Venerate Fiercely and Sword Venerate Flying Snow also began their respective battles. Although Sword Venerate Flying Snow dispersed his sword realm, the group of primordial spirit big shots still remained in the void. They did not return to the Great Thousand Worlds Divine Lands Green Caltrip Mountain Ranges Tianjia Peak. With so many great sword cultivators proficient in killing engaging in a chaotic battle, it was impossible to destroy the Divine Land as a whole. However, completely destroying the Great Qin Dynasty's Lin province and the entire Green Caltrip Mountain range was no suspense. Only by using the void as a battlefield could a battle of this level be accommodated. And in another alternate dimension, Lin Feng also felt the commotion. His gaze narrowed slightly. "Looks like there are uninvited guests." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.